Hey guys, tonight we trudge beneath an ink-black sky, the desert's chill whispering at your neck as you step over glinting sands toward an invisible gateway. You probably won't survive this, for real. Ancient Egyptians meant it literally, but tonight you're tagging along on a midnight trek through their underworld. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward, heart thumping like a restless scarab beetle, as the cold wind carries a faint scent of myrrh and burnt papyrus. Every grain of sand underfoot holds a memory of rituals long buried. Mainstream historians agree the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, was imagined as a mirror image of the living world, complete with rivers, forests, and daunting obstacles you must overcome to claim eternal life. Historians still argue whether these realms were based on actual cave systems under the Nile, or purely spiritual landscapes conceived by priests, aiming to guide spirits toward immortality. As you step past a ragged dune, torches lazily flicker into existence at the rising of a twin moon, casting weird shadows that stretch like lanky jackals. Around you, distant howls or maybe clever temple tricks echo from limestone cliffs. You shiver, recalling that the Egyptians treated the desert not as empty void, but as a living, breathing stage for gods and spirits. In fact, they placed painted tomb scenes of the afterlife inside pyramids, hoping the images themselves would help souls navigate the Duat. You peek at your crinkling papyrus map, half expecting a cartoon crocodile doodle warning of doom. Your camel, a constant companion despite its grumbles, stomped suddenly enough for you to spill a sip of wine from your waterskin. Fringe scholars have whispered that tomb graffiti sometimes included humorous curses like "May your toenails itch forever if you steal my beer," which suggests Egyptians had quite a sense of sarcasm about theft even in death's domain. You smirk, wondering if that qualifies as their earliest recorded dad joke. Above you, the Milky Way spills across the sky like the spilled contents of a golden canopic jar. The stars are local deities themselves. You remind yourself, Nut, the sky goddess, is said to swallow rare each evening, giving the sun a rest before birthing it anew at dawn. You imagine your own spirit drifting beside that solar barque. But tonight, you're on foot with a quicksand river ahead. Historians still argue whether quicksand was a literal concern or poetic metaphor, but staring down a patch of glimmering mud feels reason enough to keep your sandals dry. You recall the prayer your guide murmured earlier. "O spirits of sand and stone, reveal the path." Whether that actually summoned spectral helpers or just made the guide feel more legit is anyone's guess. But oddly, a narrow cleft in the rocks now illuminates with a greenish glow, an unplanned special effect, you think, or maybe the bar bird of the departed circling overhead. According to mainstream sources, the bar was a vital part of the soul that could leave the body and rejoin it at will, taking the form of a bird to flit between worlds. You crane your neck, half expecting a feathered spectre to swoop past. Your guide winks, handing you an ostrich feather fan, an everyday anti-heat tool back in Giza. But tonight, doubling as your makeshift torch, you wave it theatrically, lighting a battered lantern rigged with animal fat. A snaking canyon opens before you, walls etched with hieroglyphs chanting names of hidden deities and spells meant to deter grave robbers. Quirky scribbles in the corner of one relief claim "Beware the mummy's pet cat," suggesting some Egyptians believed even cats followed you after death. A notion that gives you goosebumps. Venturing in, you brush fingertips over cool stone glyphs. One panel narrates how Osiris, god of the dead, reclaimed his throne after Set's betrayal. An epic of resurrection so central that Egyptians equated their own hope for rebirth with his return from dismemberment. Historians still argue whether this myth originally symbolized agricultural cycles or royal legitimacy, but standing here you feel the weight of its power. You press forward, feeling like an unwilling contestant on some cosmic game show. Survive the duet and get your eternal reward. You hear distant, guttural laughter, could be Anubis chuckling, or the guide messing with you. You swallow a gulp of wine-flavored water, grimacing at the dusty aftertaste. Oddly, some fringe accounts suggest Egyptians used beer laced with poppy extract to calm nerves before funerary rites. So maybe this dusty water is actually less dangerous than it tastes. The canyon narrows, and cold drafts chill your spine. You glance at your reflection in a puddle, crooked lantern, sweaty hair, and wide eyes. The water ripples, and you swear you see a second face shimmering beneath your car, or life force double, watching you. Whether that's legit ghost business or just a hallucination from walking through the desert in the dead of night is unclear, but it feels profoundly personal. Even mainstream Egyptologists acknowledge the car's importance. It needed sustenance like food and drink offered at tombs to survive, which is why so many offerings appear in funerary scenes. You shake off the uncanny thought and march onward. The path splits 3 ways, each route marked by tiny statues of jackal-headed Anubis in different poses, one with arms raised, one crouching, and one crowned with ostrich plumes. Apparently, the Egyptians believed these subtle variations signaled different spells required to pass each secret door. Historians still argue whether those statues served as mnemonic devices for priests or literal guardians animating at night. Your heart thumps, equal parts excitement and mild panic, because you realize this is just the beginning. Ahead lies an endless horizon of trials. But for now, you're here, alive enough to marvel at the silent grandeur of desert underworld magic. You take a final gulp of that wine water and step through the largest archway, braced for whatever spectacle the Duat has in store. You step through the archway and the air shifts, suddenly cool with a faint metallic tang that snags at your tongue. Flickering torchlight reveals twin thrones carved from black basalt, their surfaces polished until they reflect your wary face. On the left sits Osiris, his skin the soft green of new spring leaves. On the right, Anubis, jackal-headed and lean, ears perked as if tuned to the faintest whisper. You're face to face with Egypt's ultimate power duo, Osiris, the god of resurrection who rules over the Duat, and Anubis, master embalmer and guide of souls. Your guide hushes you, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Welcome to Judgment Hall. You probably won't get invited to the Afterlife's VIP lounge anytime soon, so savor this moment like it's the last slice of pizza at a midnight snack run. Mainstream sources note that Osiris was the central figure in funerary beliefs by at least the 5th dynasty, around 200 BCE, credited with teaching humanity agriculture and the promise of eternal life. Between the two gods, the contrast is uncanny. Osiris wears the Atef crown, white linen framed by ostrich feathers, holding the crook and flail, symbols of kingship and fertility. It's as if you're in a desert-themed escape room, except failure means wandering the Duat forever with no Wi-Fi. Anubis, in his sleek black jackal form, leans forward, eyes glowing amber, ready to weigh your heart against Mart's feather. Fringe whispers claim that early depictions sometimes showed Anubis with 2 heads, one for ripping flesh during mummification, the other for whispering instructions to lost souls, though most Egyptologists dismiss that as a later tourist trap myth. There's zero papyrus evidence, so treat it like that weird rumor about Elvis in Vegas. You shuffle closer, heart thumping against your ribs, as priests in alabaster masks chant ancient spells. The hall echoes with their drone, vibrating in your chest like a bass note at a crowded concert. Minus the overpriced merch, you realize that every word they intone is a spell from the pyramid texts or coffin texts, ensuring the gods hear your guide's petition. Historians still argue whether these early texts were originally meant for royal use only, or shared among elite commoners over time. But either way, they shaped what you see now. Anubis lifts a golden scale, its pans hanging like mirrored puddles. You shine your lantern on it, seeing your reflection fracture across the surface. The guide produces a solitary ostrich feather, truly Mart's emblem of truth and cosmic order. You glance at Osiris, whose serene smile could rival that of a benevolent yoga instructor, and wonder, does he know you've been late to work twice this week? Probably not, but imagine if he did. With a gesture from Anubis, your heart, symbolized by a small alabaster statuette, hovers above the scale. Below, the feather floats weightless. You hold your breath. If your heart outweighs the feather, Amit, the devourer, a composite of crocodile, lion, and hippopotamus, will snack on your spirit. Casual Friday in the Duat, more like casual eternal obliteration. Your guide recites a spell. O Anubis, great god who presides over the scales, grant that the heart of this soul be found pure. As they speak, you notice hieroglyphs scrawled on the wall. He who steals my beans shall have no afterlife. Clearly someone was worried about supermarket looting even back then, a quirky tidbit suggesting Egyptians feared petty theft enough to curse granaries in tomb graffiti. The scale tilts, the feather wobbles, your symbolic heart trembles. You exhale, balance. You're in. A collective sigh drifts through the hall. The priests nod, and the gods lean back. You wonder if they're just as relieved or maybe plotting whether to include your name in next season's reincarnation lottery. Osiris stands, robes whispering like wheat stalks in a gentle breeze. Leaning forward, he offers a hand, his grip firm yet kind. "Welcome, seeker of life beyond death," he intones. His voice reminds you of a friendly professor slipping into bedtime storytelling mode. Comforting, with a hint of "pay attention, there might be a quiz later." Fringe accounts speculate that early worshippers may have depicted Osiris as originally a fertility spirit of marshlands before his role in the underworld was solidified, an idea still hotly debated among scholars. Historians still argue whether Osiris began as a regional deity in Busiris, or was a composite of multiple divine figures over time. You accept his hand, feeling a subtle current pulse through your fingers, like sipping an energy drink from another dimension. Osiris's gaze is infinite. You feel seen in a way that even your best Instagram filter never managed. He gestures to a wall painted with the Eye of Horus, the symbol of protection and healing. "This eye watches all who enter and exit," he says softly. Proof that, even in death, privacy was a luxury. Anubis steps forward, ears twitching at the slightest rustle. He hands you a small oil jar labeled in hieroglyphs, for purification. You uncork it, and a sharp scent of cedar and frankincense bursts forth, tickling your sinuses. You dab a drop on your brow. Instantly, the weight of your mistakes, like that email you forgot to send, feels washed away. Mainstream belief held that Anubis oversaw mummification rituals, using purifying oils to cleanse the body and soul for its journey processes, detailed in tomb murals across Saqqara. You raise an eyebrow. "So you're like the original spa therapist?" you murmur under your breath. The guide smirks. Anubis flicks his head as if to say, "I've heard it all." A light joke, because even in an ASMR sleep tour of the underworld, you deserve a chuckle. Osiris points to a bronze basin of water. "Behold, the waters of renewal," he says. "Drink and shed the fear that binds you." You bend and sip. The water tastes of honeyed lotus and desert rain. As it courses down your throat, you feel a warm calm spread through your chest. Side note, some fringe theorists claim Egyptians sometimes mixed poppy tincture into ritual drinks to induce trance states, though proof is scant and controversial. Historians still argue whether such psychoactive substances were mainstream practice, or only fringe experiments by temple elites. But standing here, water in hand, you can't tell if your calm is chemical or cosmic. Everything seems to glow with muted luminescence. Stones, hieroglyphs, even the priests' alabaster masks. Osiris and Anubis exchange a look, the kind friends have when they're on the brink of telling you a huge secret or a really bad pun. Osiris clears his throat. Your journey continues, guided but unbound. Walk with courage, and your soul will ascend. Anubis offers a nod, as if granting a hall pass. Proceed, spirit traveller, and may Mayet's balance ever be your shield. You step away from the thrones, heart still fluttering like restless papyrus reeds. Behind you, the gods' voices fade, but their presence lingers, a gentle reminder that even in the silent vastness of death, you're never truly alone. You tuck the oil jar into your cloak and glance back once more. Osiris's green gaze meets yours, promising rebirth. Anubis's jackal head tilts in a gesture of companionship. You can almost hear them whisper, "Don't trip on your robes," except thankfully robes are out of fashion, and besides, this is a no-slip zone. With newfound resolve, you walk on, knowing the gods of the underworld have stamped your passage with their silent judgments. Ahead, the path forks deeper into shadows and miracles yet unseen. You inhale deeply, floral incense, cool stone, and something indefinable, and step forward ready for the next test. You emerge from the shadowed corridor into a cavern vast enough to swallow your lantern's glow, the echo of dripping water syncing with your heartbeat. Massive pillars carved like bundled reeds line the chamber, leading you forward until you stand before the scale of justice itself. Here, in the Hall of Two Truths, you're about to place your heart on the balance against the feather of Mayat, the very essence of cosmic order. A hush falls. Torches reveal crowds of silent spectres, souls long past, their forms shifting like heat haze, clamoring to witness your trial. In the center, Anubis stands at the ready, jackal muzzle raised, eyes fixed on the golden beam that holds the pans of the scale. Beside him, Thoth, headed scribe of the gods, waits with papyrus scroll and stylus, poised to record every nuance of your judgment. You probably won't become a legendary hero if you fail, but you'll sure as sand be forgotten. You take a deep breath, tasting the cool air tinged with salt from unseen subterranean springs. Mainstream sources confirm that the heart-weighing ceremony appears prominently in the Book of the Dead from around 1550 BCE, meant to ensure only the righteous proceed to eternal bliss. Historians still argue whether this ordeal was originally envisioned as a literal weighing in the afterlife, or as a moral allegory to guide the living toward virtuous behavior. Your guide steps forward, voice hushed yet resonant. O Anubis, great lord of scales, present the feather of truth and balance the heart against Ma'at. He places an oversized ostrich feather light as a sunlit cloud in one pan. You peer as it quivers, glimmering with a pearly sheen that seems to pulse with each breath. In your hand, wrapped in linen, lies a pottery heart amulet, the substitute your mummified form carried, meant to stand in for your real heart. Fringe theory suggests some tomb owners substituted fatter amulets carved from heavier stones, hoping the gods wouldn't notice the ruse. Obviously, that speculation remains hotly contested among scholars. Anubis's jackal form steps closer, 1 foot padding onto the glowing stones. You hand over the heart amulet, and he delicately places it in the opposite pan. The chamber holds its breath. Slowly the scale tilts, ever so slightly, until both sides hover in perfect alignment. A soft chime echoes, and a ripple of relief sweeps through the spectator souls, like a wind through papyrus reeds. You exhale, your chest feeling lighter than when you entered, even though your real heart is still inside you. Thoth clears his throat, making ink-black ripples across the scroll. He who balances his heart with the feather of Ma'at shall pass upright and true. As he writes, you glimpse hieroglyphic marginalia beneath. Someone scrawled, "Don't trust Horus's cousin, he ate my myrrh." A quirky bit of humor that reminds you Egyptians had a penchant for graffiti jokes. Even in the most solemn settings, Osiris's silent presence looms beyond the scale, the green-tinged god offering a gentle nod at the successful balance. You step aside as Anubis lifts the feather and the amulet, now both balanced in mid-air, and rotates them toward Osiris's throne. Whitish light spills from above, casting the chamber in a dreamlike glow. Yet, you can't help but wonder, was Ma'at originally a goddess with feathers on her arms? Or just an abstract principle later personified by priests? Historians still argue whether Ma'at began as a divine person, or emerged from philosophical ideals, scribbled in temple libraries. As you prepare to move on, your guide points to a narrow alcove where Amit lurks, part crocodile jaw, part lion's mane, part hippo belly, waiting to devour any unworthy heart. Fringe whisperers claim she started life as a bog monster from the Nile swamps before temple artists cobbled her together, but most experts dismiss that as fanciful speculation without funerary precedent. Nevertheless, the threat feels real. Amit's gargantuan jaws gape, half gnawing at shadows, a reminder that failure here means annihilation beyond even the desert's oblivion. You glance at your own chest, heartbeat throbbing in your ears like a frantic drum. Your feet stick to the stone floor, but moving backward feels safer than forward. The guide murmurs a reassurance. Only the unburdened falter here. You have walked in balance. You smirk at the unexpected pep talk. This isn't corporate HR training, but there's a strange comfort in pep talks nonetheless. Before you can relax entirely, Thoth approaches, offering a small chalice of water for purification. You sip it, tastes of papyrus reeds and sweet date wine, an ancient recipe meant to cleanse both body and soul. Some fringe texts hint that water might have been mixed with crushed lapis lazuli dust to create a shimmering potion for high priests, but physical evidence is lacking, and few scholars take it seriously. The guide leads you through a carved doorway, flanked by reliefs depicting the 42 negative confession statements of innocence. You were meant to speak in life, like "I have not stolen, I have not lied to women, or I have not eaten the entrails of the living." In theory, declaring these by heart would ease judgment, but your guide assures you they're more like reminders of moral codes than lines in a play. Historians still argue whether the negative confessions served as actual oaths in funerary rites, or as didactic literature for scribes to recite during temple festivals. You recite a few aloud, voice echoing, "I have not committed evil, I have not stolen bread nor beer. The words feel archaic but reassuring, like reciting a beloved childhood rhyme in a language you half forgot. A sandstone relief above you shows scribes recording these confessions, their elongated fingers dancing across reed papyri. Fringe enthusiasts propose these confessions originated in earlier, now lost temple scrolls. But evidence remains elusive, like scattered papyrus fragments drifting on the Nile. Passing through the alcove, you trail a finger along carvings showing an eternal parade. Priests carrying offerings, musicians playing harps, dancers weaving through columns, rituals meant to demonstrate your soul's readiness for a joyous afterlife banquet. You imagine yourself at that feast, piled platters of roast duck, loaves of honeyed barley, and fountains of fragrant wine. Mainstream sources note that these depictions date to the New Kingdom, and were meant to comfort mourners as much as instruct the dead. Historians still argue whether everyday Egyptians actually believed in feasting for eternity or if these scenes catered to elite fantasies projected onto tomb walls. You step into a narrower corridor where a final tiny scale hangs on a door carved like a lotus blossom. Your guide explains that each soul passed here receives a talisman, a tiny heart scarab inscribed with Chapter 30b of the Book of the Dead, a spell promising the heart will not testify against you at judgment. You feel around your belt and find your own heart scarab, its wings lifted as if ready for flight. Fringe rumors suggest some tomb owners swapped in magical scarabs forged in secret workshops to cheat the spell, but archaeological digs have yet to uncover any forgeries, so take that with a grain of Nile salt. You press the talisman into a carved niche next to the door. The lotus petals glow, then shimmer to reveal a hidden latch. The door swings open, and a gentle rush of warm air greets you, stark contrast to the test you just endured. Behind you, the scale's echoes fade, but in your mind, you still feel the weight of your heart, balanced and true. Taking a final glance, you whisper, "Thank you, Matt," though the feather is long gone. You step through, guided by the soft glow of lanterns marking the path ahead. Each flicker feels like a nod from the divine, an assurance that balance, truth, and cosmic order stand vigilant. As you walk on, the hush deepens, and your pulse returns to a steady, measured beat. Ahead lie more mysteries and guardians, but for now, your heart remains light. The whispering carved words on the doorway promise, "Beyond this gate lies no death for you," and you believe them, at least for tonight. You step out of the judgment hall and exhale into a corridor lit by flickering emerald torches whose flames dance like restless cobras. The air ripples with heat, and not just from your lingering nerves, because ahead stretches the river of fire. You probably won't find this in any luxury cruise brochure, but tonight you're captaining your own infernal riverboat. The river's banks glow molten red, veins of magma weaving beneath cracked basalt that hums underfoot. Mainstream Egyptologists note that early tomb paintings sometimes depicted the Duat's waterways as rivers of fire, symbolizing trials by purification and the sun god's nightly journey through chaos. Historians still argue whether these fiery waters were ever envisioned as literal hazards or poetic metaphors for spiritual transformation. You clutch your lantern and hop across stepping stones that float like blackened lily pads. Each stone bears a tiny carving of a serpent coiled in repose, mandibles frozen mid-hiss. Fringe lore whispers that these serpents are the children of Apep, the chaos serpent swallowed nightly by Ra. Yet some fringe writers insist they actually represent venomous desert snakes real Egyptians tried to avoid because, let's face it, a real cobra bite will ruin anyone's afterlife plans. A sudden hiss erupts, and you skid sideways as a jet of flame surges across your path. You flail like a novice flamenco dancer, arms windmilling, until you land on a cool slab. Your heart thumps against your ribcage like a trapped scarab, reminding you of the heart-weighing ceremony's featherlight verdict. Remember that. Balance. Mount. No amateur snack. Deep breath. Ahead, a massive, ebony gate bars your progress, studded with bronze hieroglyphs that glow faintly gold. Two enormous crocodile heads flank the portal, jaws agape as if waiting for a midnight snack. You're tempted to ask, is this hazard OSHA approved? But wisely swallow the quip. Still, you smirk at the thought. Workplace safety in ancient Egypt was probably just watch out for hippos. You approach the gate's intricate lock mechanism, a giant bronze scarab, whose mandibles rotate. Your guide, voice now echoing off the basalt walls, recites, "O scarab of immortality, open for the righteous heart. You press your palm to the scarab's back. It rumbles and turns, grinding gears that sound like a tomb's version of your car's suspension. The crocodile jaws pull apart in a mechanical symphony, and the gate swings inward. As you step through, the air shifts. The heat fades, replaced by crisp, biting currents that send goosebumps racing up your arms. A narrow bridge of polished obsidian spans a pool of shimmering blue-black water. Lantern light splinters across the surface, revealing coiled tentacles beneath. You hesitate. Did they install a pool, or a portal to some cosmic squid dimension? Fringe speculators claim this pool mirrors the primeval waters of Nun, the chaotic abyss from which life once sprang, but evidence remains scant beyond a handful of ambiguous papyrus fragments. You tiptoe forward, boots clicking on the slick stone, think wet ice rink with an existential twist. Halfway across, the bridge tilts slightly, as if testing your balance. You shift your weight, channeling every yoga pose you learned for back pain, and inch to the far side where the path narrows into a slit, barely wider than your shoulders. You glance back, half expecting the gate to slam shut and trap you forever like a cursed YouTube clickbait. Beyond the slit lies a cavern, filled with statues carved in foul-smelling bitumen, walls lined with guardians who glare with carved-on fury. Each figure holds a different object. Knives, mangled lotus stalks, even a carved duck leg. You recall reading that ancient Egyptians believed certain foods like duck and goose were repulsive to some underworld demons, a quirky notion suggesting funerary feasts doubled as spiritual defenses. Historians still argue whether these offerings were intended for the living's comfort or as bribes for hostile entities in the Duat. Your guide points to one statue whose eyes are set with polished lapis lazuli. That's Sia, they whisper, the personification of perception. You peer closer. Indeed, the wide-eyed figure seems to watch your every move. You swallow. If Sia sees you slacking off or checking Instagram, okay, there's no Wi-Fi here, but still, she might tattle to Ra on the solar Barque. Pressing on, you enter a chamber so low you must stoop. The floor is intricately tiled with black and white basalt in a swirling pattern, dizzying as a chessboard drawn by someone on too much lotus wine. You navigate the spiral toward a small alcove where a single jug of water rests on a stone plinth. It gleams like the last drop of dew on desert sand. Your guide invites you to refill your water skin, telling you this spring is blessed by Isis herself. You kneel, sip, and feel a soothing coolness flow through you. Fringe tales suggest some Egyptians invoked Isis to bless well water for purification rites, but solid proof lies only in later Coptic texts. Refreshed, you emerge from the stooped passage to face the gauntlet of serpents. Here, the path is tightly packed with coiled stone asp sculptures, their painted eyes glinting red. You hold your breath and walk through, careful to step only on carved footprints etched between the snakes, as if a cosmic hopscotch game. One misstep, the guide warns, and the asp sculptures might animate to nip at your soul. You test the logic. Sculpted stone cannot bite, but the threat feels real enough. Fear, after all, is half the magic. One snake carving bears graffiti in hieroglyphs. I outran this gauntlet wearing sandals, no big deal. You grin. Early travel influences existed too, apparently. A Fringe inscription nearby boasts, "Behold my speed, mortal fool," signed by someone named Amenhotep, though historians still argue whether that refers to the famous pharaoh or just a very confident clerk. After what feels like an eternity, the serpents give way to an open plaza, where a dark, still pool lies cradled by basalt columns. Above the water hovers a massive winged scarab, wings spread in a protective embrace. You approach and see inscribed below, "Only the pure of heart may pass, untouched." You recall your successful heart-weighing, smile, and step forward. The scarab's wings descend, revealing a hidden staircase spiraling downward. You begin your descent, each step echoing in the cavern's hush. The walls here leak water that smells faintly of honey and myrrh, a dreamy scent that makes you wonder if someone spiked your earlier wine water with perfume. You wipe your hand along the damp stone and feel carved glyphs glowing faintly blue. Your lips whisper the phrase you learned back in Section 1, "O spirits of sand and stone, reveal the path," and for a heartbeat, you swear the glyphs pulse bright. Whether that's genuine magic or a trick of your imagination fueled by lotus tincture remains debatable. Historians still argue whether such invocations were truly part of common funerary practice, or later romanticized by 19th century Egyptomania. At the bottom of the staircase you arrive at a final basalt door inlaid with gold. The door bears a single inscription: "He who conquers the barriers of the Duat shall meet the dawn reborn." You nod, heart steady now, and push it open. A rush of cool air brushes your face. The promise of new trials ahead, and perhaps finally the first taste of true freedom beyond death's domain. With that, you step forward into the unknown, leaving behind rivers of fire, ebony gates, and serpentine horrors. Your journey through the Duat's barriers has only just begun, but for now, you're alive, trembling, and oddly exhilarated. You step into a wide chamber whose ceiling arches like the belly of a colossal beetle. Flickering emerald lanterns reveal walls crowded with niches, each cradling tiny figurines and gleaming trinkets. Your guide stops, tapping a scarab-shaped amulet hanging around your neck. "Here is where the magic truly begins," they murmur. You probably won't make the cover of Ancient Egypt Monthly with a fashion statement like this, but tonight you're accessorizing for cosmic survival. Mainstream Egyptologists agree that amulets were essential talismans tucked among wrappings or worn by the living to protect souls on their journey. Historians still argue whether these objects derived from practical folk medicine charms, or were entirely priest-crafted magic. But for their origin, you can't deny the comfort of carrying carved symbols of power, your own tiny allies in the dark. You raise your palm to inspect your scarab, its back polished to a soft green glow that feels warm against your skin. The scarab, representing Khepri, the rising sun god, was believed to roll the sun across the sky, and by extension, souls through the afterlife. Fringe theorists suggest some Egyptians even wired small scarab-shaped objects with copper filaments, creating the world's first mood lamp to ward off evil spirits, though no archaeological excavation has uncovered such ancient circuitry. So take that rumor with a grain of desert salt. Next, your guide offers you a jed pillar amulet, 4 stacked bars crowned by a capital. "This," they whisper, "is stability incarnate." You slide it onto a linen cord, feeling the weight settle calmly at your chest. The jed symbol represents Osiris's spine, the very support of life and resurrection. Historians still argue whether the jed originally signified the backbone of a creator god or emerged later as part of royal iconography. But its association with enduring strength is undisputed. A sudden tremor ripples through the room, and tiny motes of dust swirl in the lantern light. You jump, merely dropping your D-jed, and the guide chuckles softly. "Test 1. Always secure your amulets," they tease, as if ancient underworld trials required a pre-flight checklist. You grin, grateful for the levity. Nothing says bedtime history like a low-stakes spiritual safety reef. Around you, other souls clutch their own protections. A heart scarab stamped with Chapter 30b, a wadjet eye gleaming blue-green against golden backing, and even a tiny bronze biz figure, meant to scare off malevolent forces with his grotesque grin. You notice one pilgrim wearing a ring engraved with the name of Penihasaka Osiris, a composite deity of craftsman, death and rebirth. That's multitasking divine style, you think. No wonder modern multi-tools haven't beaten that branding. Your guide stops at a pedestal adorned with alabaster jars. Protective oils and substances, they explain, lifting a jar labeled Western Desert Sand. You peer inside, fine grains glittering with flecks of feldspar. "Sprinkle this at points of danger for added shield," the guide says, and you flick a pinch onto your boots. Fringe accounts claim some tomb owners blended desert sands with chewed neem leaves to create antimicrobial salves, an inventive but poorly attested practice that keeps scholars up at night, debating ancient public health measures. Historians still argue whether the inclusion of local sands in ritual kits was symbolic of regional power or purely ornamental. You step forward, and the floor shifts beneath your feet. The ground rearranges into a mosaic of stone tiles, each depicting a different protective symbol. The Ankhs of life, the Was scepter of dominion, and the Uchat, the Eye of Horus. You feel as if you're walking on a roll call of divine bodyguards. You probably won't see these in a modern security briefing. Please stand on the Eye of Horus for maximum safety, but here it feels reassuring. Your hand grazes a tile with a tiny hole. Curious, you peer in and discover a secret cavity containing a miniature figure of a jackal-headed deity holding a jug of oil. The guide explains this is rare, a miniature version of Anubis, pouring purification fluid over offerings. It's sort of like carrying a priest in your pocket, you quip. The guide laughs, and you share a moment of absurd camaraderie, proof that even in the serious business of afterlife prep, there was room for humor. Across the chamber, a pedestal holds a sealed pot inscribed with hieroglyphs, indicating "Protect against the devourer." The guide unscrews the lid, revealing a tightly wound bundle of papyrus slips. You carefully extract one and unravel a short spell. "May the dread beast find naught but dust in my bones." Mainstream studies note many such spells appear in the Book of the Dead, designed to confuse or repel Amit and other crocodile-hippo mashups. Historians still argue whether these inscribed spells worked primarily as mnemonic devices for reciters or as actual metaphysical shields, but their presence in hundreds of coffins suggests people took them seriously. You slide the papyrus back and step onto a ramp leading to a second level. Here, an array of blue-glazed faience figures stand sentinel. Hathor cows, baboon Thoth hybrids, and falcon-headed Horus icons. Each figure radiates a faint, otherworldly glow. Fringe codices whisper that some high-ranking Egyptians experimented with placing crystals inside these figures to refract moonlight toward hostile spirits. A method akin to modern laser deterrence, though mainstream experts dismiss this as Victorian-era fantasy. You shuffle alongside the row of guardians, mentally tallying your own magical arsenal. Scarab, Jed, Eye, Bez, papyrus spells, protective sands. It's like raiding a metaphysical hardware store. You probably won't find an instruction manual labeled "How to Eternally Outwit Crocodile Lion Hippo Hybrids," but you feel oddly competent. Suddenly the Faiane Horus statue peers down at you, wings outstretched, and a soft clicking sound echoes. A hidden panel slides open, revealing a small basin filled with clear water. Above it, an inscription reads, "Cleanse in the eyes reflection." Your guide gently suggests you wash your hands, saying the water is blessed by Wadjet, the protective cobra goddess. You cup the liquid and watch the flame reflections dance like tiny serpents. Fringe writers propose Egyptians associated reflective water with portals to other dimensions, a theory debated fiercely in academic journals. Historians still argue whether reflective pools in tombs served as symbolic mirrors to the soul, or were practical features for ritual purification. You dab a bit on your forehead and feel a subtle tingle, either residual power from the protective waters, or maybe you're just cold from the chamber's drafts. Either way, the sensation jolts you awake, like the perfect amount of caffeine in desert nocturne form. As you descend the ramp, the guide collects your trinkets, clinking them into a woven basket. "We'll leave them here for your return," they say. "Take only the knowledge and the protection you need." You nod, mentally summarizing the arsenal you've amassed. Feelings of vulnerability slip away, replaced by a quiet confidence. If these talismans can safeguard a soul through monstrous guardians, they'll handle your Monday morning commute with ease. You step onto a polished stone corridor, the niches and benches empty now. Your companions deposited for safekeeping. The cool air feels different here, less charged with magic, and more like the calm after a thunderstorm. You slip your hands into your pockets, and find your scarab and Jed nestled snugly in their linen wrapping. You flex your fingers around them, comforted by each carved curve. Ahead, torchlight dances on a stone door etched with twin ankhs and the phrase, "Safe passage for the worthy." You take one last look at the chamber of amulets and protections, a shrine to humanity's ancient ingenuity in the face of cosmic dread. Whether these charms actually warded off crocodile demons or merely provided psychological reassurance remains debated, but standing here, you feel the power of belief itself. With resolved steps, you push open the door and advance, your heart lighter now, your mind bolstered by countless symbols of strength. The next trials await, but you walk on, armored by faith, magic, and a tiny beetle that really boosts your mood. You slip through a narrow passage into a chamber thick with the scent of aged papyrus, where long scrolls unfurl like lazy serpents across low stone benches. Lantern light shivers over yellowed fibers, revealing columns of intricate hieroglyphs, spells meant to crack open the secrets of death and launch your soul into eternity. This is the birthplace of the Book of the Dead. You probably won't find your name immortalized in these dusty volumes, but tonight you're paging through the ancient world's ultimate self-help guide to the afterlife. Mainstream Egyptologists date the earliest books of spells to around 1550 BCE in the New Kingdom, evolving from earlier pyramid and coffin texts reserved for royalty into more personalized collections for commoners. Historians still argue whether these texts emerged because of rising literacy among non-priests, or as a savvy way for temples to boost revenue by selling magical services. You reach out to touch a scroll labeled with the name of a modest scribe. You smudge one hieroglyph with a fingertip, leaving a tiny fingerprint that future archaeologists will debate for centuries. A priest in linen robes glides forward, offering you a stiff brush of palm fibers to clear away dust. "These are your lifelines," he says, voice echoing softly. "Each chapter a waypoint, each spell a shield." Unfurling spell 25, you read the iconic declaration, "O heart of my mother, O heart of my mother, do not stand against me." This plea, meant to coax your disembodied heart into silence so it cannot testify against you, stands at the core of the ritual texts. Fringe enthusiasts assert that some versions included hidden anagrams, tiny ghost words that only trained eyes could see, to confuse Amit further, though no surviving scroll has yielded solid evidence of such secret encoding. You step deeper into a section lined with wooden boxes containing small papyrus fragments. Each fragment bears a different chapter number. You pick up a slip inscribed with chapter 30b, the very spell your heart scarab bore back in section. There's a thrill in holding the original words written by unknown hands. Millennia ago, you half expect a termite to scuttle across the text, but the fragments lie pristine in clear resin. A low chanting drifts from a hidden alcove where scribes dip reed pens into black ink. Their styluses tap rhythmically against palette stones, mixing freshly ground soot with water. You catch a whiff of the ink's acrid tang, reminding you of old library books, and the faintest hint of burnt sugar, an olfactory callback to those dedications of honeyed lotus in the River of Fire. A Fringe account posits that some temple workshops added opium resin to ink as a preservative, but historians still argue whether that's credible or just a 19th century traveller's yarn. Along one wall, a grand display shows how the text transformed through time. Pyramid texts carved on royal burial chambers, coffin texts painted on wooden coffins of the Middle Kingdom, and finally the papyrus scrolls of the New Kingdom, more portable and personalized than their stone-bound predecessors. You trace your lantern's glow along a painted timeline, imagining scribes laboring over each new innovation, like ancient software updates that replaced brute force carving with elegant script. Your guide gestures to a bronze stand holding an open scroll. "Behold the spell of the winding stair," they whisper. You peer and read instructions for navigating cosmic staircases between hidden realms, steps that materialize only when spoken aloud. You recite one line softly, "Open for me the stair of flame and let the blazing path appear." A flicker of torchlight makes the stone floor ripple, though your rational mind suspects trick mirrors and drafty air. Historians still argue whether such staged effects were genuine ritual aids or later embellishments by temple showmen. Nearby, a small placard identifies a cache of lost chapters recovered from a merchant's tomb at Deir al-Medina. Among them is a peculiar incantation promising the power to speak with spirits at will. Fringe scholars seize on this as proof Egyptians practiced necromantic conversing, but others counter that it's simply a poetic metaphor for memory and legacy. You step toward a low altar where a solitary scroll rests, bound in faded red leather. The priest kneels and unties it. This is the Papyrus of Ani, perhaps the most famous copy of the Book of the Dead. You hold your breath as he lays it out on the altar. A mile-long ribbon of papyrus covered in colourfully detailed vignettes depicting each spell. The painted scenes show Ani navigating obstacles, offering gifts to gods, and transforming into a heron floating above mirrored lakes. You marvel at the artistry, vibrant blues, deep yellows, and the richest berry reds still clinging to the fibres. "You walk in their footsteps," the priest intones. You lean in close. A tiny vignette shows Amit snapping jaws at a fleeing soul, an echo of that graffiti warning you about Amit back in section 3. You shudder, recalling how close you came to being lunch. The priest smiles softly, shaking his head at your goosebumps. You unfurl a passage showing chapter 125's dramatic courtroom scene. Anubis adjusts the balance, Thoth records judgments, and Osiris presides with calm authority. The surrounding text offers elaborate permutations of the core plea, 32 variants to satisfy different sins. Fringe rumors tell of a secret 33rd variant, a master key spell so potent it was removed from public circulation. Whether this existed or is just the stuff of conspiracy circles remains fiercely debated. Leaning back, you note marginalia, in red ink, notes by a later priest offering performance tips. Intone with low, resonant tone, wave lotus fan clockwise, and avoid hiccups. You laugh quietly, ancient stage directions for the Afterlife dramas. You probably won't find Broadway directors quoting these, but the thought brightens the cavern's hush. Further along, a display of miniature scrolls caught your eye, tiny enough to slip inside a heart scarab. The priest explains these were pocket guides for travelers who feared big scrolls would tear in transit. Fringe collectors claim a few private tombs sealed entire pocket. Books of the dead inside statues, but mainstream experts note only fragments survive, making the idea tantalizing but unproven. Historians still argue whether such miniatures were a real mercy offering or just depictions of piety. Finally, you stand before a richly carved stone slab engraved with a summary of the book's purpose. Let these words guide your ba, empower your ka, and unite you with the ake. The hieroglyphs glow softly in the lantern haze. You close your eyes and recite the line, feeling a subtle warmth like the comforting hum of that fan in section 1. The priest rolls the Annie papyrus back into its leather case and offers it to you. Carry what you need, he says. You tuck the miniature scroll into your tunic, feeling its reassuring bulk against your side. Your heart flutters at the thought. Armed with spells both grand and intimate, you possess a sacred toolset to navigate the labyrinthine Duat. As you step away, the lanterns dim and a hush falls over the chamber. The scent of papyrus and ink lingers, a reminder that words more than swords or shields hold the power to shape destiny. You glance back once more, the scrolls reclining on their benches, waiting for the next soul brave or curious enough to decipher their secrets. Then you exhale, ready to press onward. The path ahead shimmers with promise and peril, but you walk forward confident that each spell you now carry is a beacon through the gathering dark. You emerge into a vast cavern suffused with ethereal blue light, as if the very walls are brimming with liquid moonlight. Before you lies Ra's solar barque, its gilded prow carved into the head of a fierce ram, oars glinting like rows of cosmic spears. Tonight, you're a reluctant deckhand on the sun god's nightly cruise through the underworld's deepest seas. You probably won't get hazard pay, but at least you'll have bragging rights at the Afterlife's equivalent of 5 things I did before I died. Ra's vessel creaks as silent priests chant above the lapping of obsidian waves. Mainstream Egyptologists confirm that ancient texts describe 2 main barques, one for day, one for night, gliding through the heavens and Duat respectively, ensuring the sun's rebirth each dawn. Historians still argue whether these journeys were literal routes mapped by priest knights or symbolic expressions of the sun's cycle. But either way, the idea shaped temple rituals for millennia. You step aboard and the deck shudders beneath your sandals. The air smells of burning lotus and resin, mingling with a salty undertow of brackish pools. Lantern bearers in turquoise tunics fan incense, smoke that coils toward the vaulted ceiling, revealing frescoes of starry constellations winking overhead. You reach out to touch a bronze rail etched with hieroglyphs, proclaiming, "He who guides Ra through chaos stands immortal." Fringe scribbles in a margin joke that a carpenter named Imhotep once left a pun. Nautical by nature, though no serious Egyptologist has ever found that in any papyrus, so treat it like a winking fan fiction note. Ra's barque glides forward, leaving a trail of liquid sparks on the water's surface. Ahead looms the mouth of a tunnel, where darkness presses like velvet. Your guide leans close, voice hushed. Here swims Apep, the serpent of chaos, waiting to swallow the sun. You swallow back a gulp. Apep, also called Apophis, is the underworld's leviathan, hundreds of feet long, scales blacker than starless nights. Every evening, Ra must defeat or evade this beast to rise again, otherwise dawn would never come. You grip the rail as the boat pitches into Apep's lair, torchlight reflecting off his sinuous coils. Something slithers under the hull, perhaps a scout serpent or debris from older battles. Your hair stands on end. Mainstream accounts tell of priests performing elaborate rituals, shaking rattles, chanting spells to symbolically strike Apep down, ensuring safe passage for Ra's vessel. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies happened nightly at temple courtyards or only during festivals, but the terror of chaos was central to Egyptian worldview. A hiss crescendos, and for a heartbeat you fear the serpent's jaws. But the Barque bursts through into a cathedral-like chamber, its vaulted ceiling painted with a colossal image of Nut swallowing the sun. You exhale, feeling the tension drain from your limbs. The guide nods toward a small shrine built into the rock, clay figurines of warrior gods brandishing knives aimed at Apep's silhouette. Quirky legends claim some Egyptians fashioned tiny spells on a stick, wooden wands dipped in charred serpent ashes, which they believed gave extra oomph to the Barque's defense, though surviving examples are as rare as well-behaved Nile crocodiles. You shuffle forward, each footstep echoing. The Barque's stern swings into another chamber, where faces carved into basalt peer down, eyes inlaid with glimmering quartz. These are the guardians of the weighing of the bones, meant to collect residual chaos energy from Apep's defeat. You pinch yourself. This is no theme park ride, yet your pulse races as if you're on a cosmic roller coaster. Lantern bearers chant a litany. O Ra, breaker of night, conqueror of chaos, may your light prevail. Their voices groove like a lullaby, pitched to epic proportions. You hum along quietly. After all, harmony soothes even the most monstrous serpents. Fringe accounts suggest some tomb chamber musicians played actual lyres, tuned to frequencies believed to disorient Apep, drawing on early acoustic science, but skeptics call that Victorian embellishment. Historians still argue whether musical accompaniment was integral to the ritual or a later poetic flourish in temple hymns. As the Barque glides deeper, you notice carved images of other serpents, Mayan, the protective coiled one, wrapping around Ra's bark like a living moat. You recall Mayan's role from the Coffin texts, both guardian and companion, shielding the sun god through perilous waters. You tap the rail thoughtfully. If you could arrange a similar guard chute in everyday life, maybe you'd finally have a decent morning commute. Suddenly, water around the Barque stirs. Something massive slides beneath, throwing up waves that lap against the hull. You grip the rail, failing to suppress a yelp. The guide raises a hollow shell made from a ram's horn and blows. A deep, resonant tone vibrates through the chamber, an ancient acoustic trick designed to scare off chaos creatures. The waves recede beneath the surface. You glimpse flickers of scaled coils drawing back into shadows. You lean over to inspect a nearby panel, showing priests digging channels around the temple precincts. Evidence that they recreated the Underworld journey in physical form, complete with trenches of water to symbolize the chaotic seas. Historians still argue whether these trenches were flooded regularly during festivals or left dry as bas-relief symbols. But the ingenuity of creating mini duets on the Nile's edge is indisputable. The Barque emerges into a final antechamber where the ceiling opens onto a sky painted with dawn's first rays. A small pool reflects the promise of rebirth. The water glows pale gold as if infused with sunbeams. Ra's crew falls silent, and you feel a palpable shift, a quiet reverence, as though the entire cavern breathes in unison. Mainstream sources note that Egyptians believed the Barque's arrival here heralded the sun god's union with the horizon goddess, ushering in the new day. Your guide whispers, "This is the place of Sekhem where power is renewed." You step off the deck onto polished limestone etched with hieroglyphs, celebrating Rhea's triumph. Underfoot, a faint vibration hums, like the residual energy of victory. You lift your eyes to see a carved relief of Rhea emerging as a scarlet disc flanked by Uri serpents, wings outspread. You pause, taking in the fragrant breeze, scented with blossoming acacia, an unexpected touch of spring amid stone and shadow. Some Fringe devotees believed priests carried potted acacia branches on the Barque to represent new life, but mainstream archaeologists dismiss this as logistically improbable. Historians still argue whether such botanical offerings featured in the nightly procession or were reserved for grand festivals like the Opep festival. You breathe deeply, letting the soft hum of renewal wash over you. The dread of Apep's lair feels distant now, replaced by a warm glow in your chest, the promise of dawn reborn. You turn to your guide, Lanterns flame, dancing in their eyes, and they offer a small, sun-shaped talisman. Wear this to carry the sun's strength forth, they say. You clasp it around your neck, feeling a surge of calm resolve, hard to explain in modern terms, but imagine your favorite power-up in a video game, only cosmic. With the talisman secure, you step away from Barque as it recedes, slipping back into the deeper reaches of the Duat. Behind you, a sluice gate grinds shut with satisfying finality. The echo of victory chants slowly fades, replaced by the hush of drifting dust motes dancing in dawn's gentle glow. You walk on, heart buoyed by the Barque's triumph, confident that if you can survive cosmic serpents and chaoses more, the rest of your journey through the Duat might just be manageable. Ahead, new marvels and tests await. You step forward, talisman warmed against your chest, ready to embrace whatever wonders and trials lie beyond. You step from the corridor of 42 gates into a circular chamber, bathed in soft, silver light that seems to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. The air here feels electric, humming against your skin like a distant chant. At the center stands a shallow pool of mirror-smooth water, its surface broken only by concentric ripples that expand and contract in time with your heartbeat. This is the chamber of becoming, where your soul transforms into an Ak, the luminous, effective spirit that joins the gods. You probably won't get a glowing makeover in your lifetime, but tonight, you're trading mortal fragility for immortal brilliance. Mainstream Egyptologists note that the concept of the Ak appears in funerary texts from the Middle Kingdom around 2000 BCE onward, representing the soul's final union with divine light. Historians still argue whether the Ak status was envisioned as an instantaneous spark at death, or as a gradual alchemical process guided by spells and rituals. Your guide stands at the pool's edge, holding a polished bronze mirror that reflects the chamber's luminous glow back into your eyes. Behold your Ka and Ba, they intone, and witness their melding into Ak. You peer into the mirror and see not just your face, but two faint doubles hovering just behind your shoulders. One feather-light and wide-winged, the Ba, the other solid and grounded, the Ka. Fringe whispers claim some Egyptians believe the Ba and Ka were once twin deities exiled to the living realm, forced to reunite for true divinity, though very few scholars take that speculation seriously. You inhale deeply, the scent of lotus incense curling around your senses. The guide begins to chant a prayer from chapter 17 of the Book of the Dead, praising Ra's transformative power. O Ra, who shines on the hidden pool, grant that this soul may shine in your realm. As the words roll off your tongue, the water's surface shivers, then parting to reveal a golden glow beneath. You step forward, hesitating only for a heartbeat, just long enough to recall how clutching your scarab talisman calmed you back in section 4. Kneeling at the pool, you scoop a handful of water and lift it to your lips. It tastes of honeyed mango and desert dawn, as if the essence of sunlight itself has been distilled into liquid form. You sip, feeling warmth surge from your belly to your fingertips. The ripples at the center intensify, forming a dancing halo of light that spreads outward until the entire chamber glows like molten silver. A faint voice echoes from beyond the walls, reciting the spell for shining forth. I have become a star in the firmament. I shine on earth as on heaven. Historians still argue whether this was an original Egyptian composition or a later Hellenistic interpolation, but whether the words are wholly authentic matters little as their power hums in your blood. You stand, water dripping from your chin, and watch as your reflection shimmers, then fractures into multiple luminous forms that dance around you. Each flicker feels like a layer of your earthly self peeling away, revealing something more radiant beneath. Fringe theorists have suggested that scribes encoded secret instructions in marginalia, tiny glyphs, indicating precise moment of water intake to optimize arc transformation. Yet no surviving manuscript proves this detail. Your guide raises an obsidian knife, its blade glinting with an inner light. This will symbolically sever your ties to mortal fetters, they explain. You nod, swallowing a laugh, decapitate your ego. Progressive politics would love this metaphor. With a gentle motion, they draw the knife across your shoulder, not cutting your flesh, but tracing the outline of an invisible seal, the hieroglyph for Shining One. At the touch, you feel a gentle sting, as if static electricity sparks across your skin. In that instant, the tripartite soul, Barque and Ib, the heart, converges. You feel your heart amulet palpitate at your chest, a reassuring reminder of your successful weighing back in Section 3. The guide intones a final verse. May your ebe stand true, your ba take flight, and your ka sustain you in glory. The seal flares, then dissolves into motes of glimmering light that swirl around your body, merging into a brilliant aura. You stagger backward, blinking against the radiance, until your eyes adjust and you see the chamber not as stone, but as a corridor lined with starfields. The torches beside the pool have transformed into glowing orbs of pure energy, illuminating paths that weren't there before. You realize that the Ak is not just a state of being, but a new perspective, a way of perceiving hidden passages and secret truths. Your guide smiles, eyes reflecting your own luminescence. Rise, Ak, and walk in light. As they speak, the pool's surface rises like a gentle wave, forming a shimmering pathway that leads to a cryptic door etched with the symbol of a soaring falcon over a radiant sun. You take a cautious step onto the water path, and it holds you, buoyant as if on air. Legend says that once transformed, the Ak could traverse walls and pass indistinguishable among divine hosts. Fringe ramblings even propose that some high-ranking Egyptians commissioned special dyes to dye their linen wrappings with starlight, an idea so fanciful it lives mainly in novelists' imaginations. Still, as you drift across the floating light, you can't deny the sense of ease and boundless possibility. Halfway to the door, you glance down and see your feet, leaving faint trails of glowing glyphs on the water's surface, each step inscribing secret powers: invisibility, clarity of vision, the ability to speak with Duat denizens. You wonder if anyone ever mapped these glyph footprints on papyrus for future pilgrims, or if they simply faded back into nothing once the path dissipated. Historians still argue whether descriptions of these trails in late-period spells reflect genuine ritual practice or later theatrical elaborations. At the door, you place your hand on the glyph-carved surface. It feels warm and alive, pulsing like your newly radiant pulse. The door swings inward, silently, revealing the next chamber, a hall filled with floating lanterns shaped like bed, each drifting in formation to form a constellation of living spirits. You step through, the water path closing behind you in a shimmer of light, and find yourself standing on solid ground once more, though the walls continue to glow softly, as if embedded with starlight. You inhale, tasting the lingering sweetness of that transformative water on your lips. You feel simultaneously weightless and solid, a paradox you accept without question because it seems wholly logical here. Your breath comes easily, unlabored by fear. You recall the dread of the fiery river back in Section 4, the serpent's gauntlet and the ordeal of judgment, and marvel at how far you've come. The guide places a hand on your shoulder, a grounding touch that feels both comforting and significant. Walk forth as Ark, the shining spirit. Their voice fades as you turn your gaze forward into that hall of bird lanterns. Each lantern flickers as if greeting you, norms of reality bending to acknowledge your new essence. You step into the hall, a silent vow forming in your mind, to honor your transformation, harness your newfound efficacy, and continue this journey not as a mere traveler, but as a celestial being. The echoes of your steps resonate with soft bangs against the stone, each echo a note in the cosmic symphony of the duet. Remember, you whisper to yourself, ears remembering the guide's voice. I shine among the gods. With that, you stride forward into the constellation of bar lights, each one a friend, each one a reminder that your journey has entered a new luminous phase. Your mortal self lingers as memory. The Ak you have become steps boldly into the unfolding mysteries beyond. You step through the basalt door into a corridor lined with 42 smaller portals, each carved with a stern-faced deity clutching a symbol of judgment. Flickering torchlight casts their reliefs in sharp relief, their eyes seeming to follow your every move. You probably won't get actual due process here, no right to appeal, no bail. But tonight, you're standing trial 42 times over, and each gate demands its own secret word or spell. Ahead, the first gate gapes like an expectant maw, emblazoned with the figure of Heka, god of magic. Your guide whispers, "Speak the word Uab to pass unharmed." You inhale, remembering how Heka was both the divine personification of magic and the very force that empowered priests to weave spells. Mainstream Egyptologists note that Heka's name appears in pyramid texts as early as the 5th dynasty, indicating magic's institutional importance from the dawn of royal funerary practice. Historians still argue whether Heka was originally a neutral cosmic force later personified as a god, or always worshipped as a distinct deity. You murmur Uabad, and the gate shudders. Stone wings sliding aside with a grinding echo. A waft of cool air greets you, scented faintly of lotus and myrrh, like the perfume you sniffed back in Section 2 before Osiris's Hall. You step forward, heart thumping like a tambourine tumbled down a staircase, entire left foot landing just shy of a glinting threshold. Gate 2 looms, marked by a jackal-headed figure clasping a crook and flail. Anubis again, but this time in his role as judge of the dead, rather than embalmer. The word here is Temu, your guide said. You recall how the Egyptians believed Anubis not only prepared bodies but also presided over judgment as a protector of the righteous. Fringe tales claim some tomb owners inscribed Anubis's name backwards in their spells, hoping to confuse any stray demons, but mainstream scholars dismiss such backward inscriptions as 19th century forgeries. You clear your throat and whisper Temu. The carved jackal head swings inward like a silent doorway. You step through, noticing the stone floor here bears an inlaid pattern of a single ostrich feather. The same symbol of Ma'at you balanced back in Section. A small smile tugs at your lips. Once is luck, twice is skill, but now you're batting 1,000. Gate 3 depicts Duamitif, son of Horus, with a jackal head, guardian of the stomach. You owe no sustenance to snake demons. Your guide teases. But say Duamitif anyway. Duamitif protected internal organs during mummification, ensuring the dead could digest offerings in the next world. Mainstream texts show his invocation appears in Coffin texts of the Middle Kingdom, indicating his cultic rise around 2000 BCE. Historians still argue whether Duamitif's role as stomach guardian was a later addition to a pre-existing cult, or part of a unified funerary theology from the start. You croak the name and the gate's belly high relief eases open. A warm draft wafts out, like someone left the oven on. Clearly Duamitif is very glad you brought no snacks. You hurry past, kicking up a cloud of dust that sparkles in the torchlight like stardust. Gate 4 is overseen by Imseti, the human-headed son of Horus, guardian of the liver. Speak Imseti to proceed, the guide murmurs. You pause, recalling the liver's symbolic role as seat of emotion in Egyptian thought. So much for your stable ego. Fringe speculation suggests some priests once sacrificed geese livers in ritual disguise to honor Imseti, but no archaeological residue has confirmed goose blood in temple basins. You say, Imseti, and the relief shifts. The portal opens with a soft sigh, revealing a pattern of crocodile skin carved in the threshold. You step over it carefully, mindful of that brief flirtation with real crocodile jaws back in Section. Gate 5 features Kibesenuf, the falcon-headed Horus son who guards the intestines. Say Kibesenuf, roll it around your tongue, your guide insists. You do, and the falcon's beak-capped visage slides away, revealing a mural of swirling reeds and river water. It reminds you of the pools you crossed in Barque, albeit without cosmic serpents. Gate 6 brings you face to face with the veiled goddess Neith, holding a bow and shield. Invoke Neith for protection, the guide says softly. Neith was revered as war goddess and huntress, an apt image for defending against underworld perils. Mainstream inscriptions on temple walls at Sais, where she was chiefly worshipped, date her cult to the predynastic era, suggesting she may be one of Egypt's oldest deities. Historians still argue whether Neith's later associations with weaving and motherhood represent an evolution of her mythos, or parallel local traditions merging over time. You whisper her name, the carved shield slides aside, and star-shaped apertures appear overhead, letting in faint shafts of starlight. You pause, blinking at the sudden dark blue pinpricks, and remember the delicate balance of magic and astronomy in Egyptian ritual. Gate 7 depicts Set's fearful form, a canine with curved ears and forked tail, hand set to keep chaos at bay. The guide suggests with a smirk. A Fringe commentator once claimed chanting Set's name backward reversed his chaotic influence, but Egyptologists scoff at that, as New Age speculation with no textual support. Historians still argue whether Set's complex nature, both protector and destroyer, reflects shifting political climates or theological reinterpretation across eras. Taking a deep breath, you hum, Set, under your breath. The jagged stone crescents of the portal settle away, and you step through feeling a shiver course up your spine. Chaos may be kept at arm's length, but you can't forget its simmering presence. Gate 8 is overseen by Thoth, ibis-headed scribe and judge, jotting judgments with a golden stylus. Speaketh to honor his transformation aspect. The guide says, Thoth's name means he who is like the ibis, and he was credited with inventing writing itself. Mainstream sources link his worship to the city of Hermopolis, around 220–200 BCE, where scribal schools flourished under his patronage. Historians still argue whether Thoth's literary domain inspired real-world scribal traditions or mythologized them after the fact. You murmur, Kepre. The ibis's beak-carved portal swings aside with a resonant chime, exposing a smooth ramp, descending deeper, the walls inscribed with flowing cursive hieratic script. It feels like stepping into a giant papyrus scroll. Gate 9 shows Mart herself, feather crown balanced atop her head and ankh in one hand. Declare Mart aloud, your guide encourages. You echo Mart, feeling the name roll off your tongue like a whispered promise of order. The portal opens, revealing a floor mosaic of dancing feathers and shifting sand patterns. A callback to the feather you balanced back in Section 3. Gate 10 is an unexpected composite, a figure with the head of a baboon and the body of a crocodile. That's Babi, your guide identifies. Devourer of the unworthy. Sigh Babi, they add. Half laugh. Babi's cult remained marginal, mostly attested in funerary papyri from Middle Egypt. Fringe rumors say some priests used to roast actual baboon meat as an offering to appease him, though mainstream archaeologists question both the taste and the practicality of such rituals. Historians still argue whether Babi was a localized folk deity later absorbed into the official pantheon, or always existed on the fringes of state religion. You sigh the name and the gate's baboon croc visage recedes. You emerge to find the corridor narrowed, the remaining 32 gates looming ahead like a gauntlet from a cosmic obstacle course. You note each portal's unique iconography and file the words in your mind like a never-ending flashcard deck. Your palms sweat, but your steps remain steady. With each incantation, you feel an almost physical unlocking of cosmic locks, each spell both a key and a test of faith in an age where words literally shaped reality. You probably won't need to recite all 42 spells again, unless you plan to crash at the Duat's after-party. But knowing them gives you quiet confidence. As you advance, the torches flicker, and a cool draft wafts through the open gates, carrying whispers of every god you've honored. It's like walking through a celestial roll call of divine power, each deity acknowledging your passage with silent assent. Beyond the 10th gate, your guide pauses. Rest here, they say, for the next gates demand greater precision. You lean against the smooth basalt wall, recalling that steady sip of Nile spring water back in Section 4, and the comforting weight of your scarab from Section 4. Armed with memory, magic words, and a sliver of divine favor, you feel equipped to face whatever lies beyond. Your heart thrums in harmony with the torchlight's gentle flicker. Ahead, 32 more gods wait, silent judges in a chamber of eternal statutes. But for now, you breathe, whispering thanks to each deity whose name you've spoken, and step onward, voice steady, soul unbroken, into the next phase of your journey. You step from the luminous hall of Ballanterns into a vaulted chamber whose ceiling is painted with scenes of endless feasts. Loaves of bread piled high, jars of frothy beer brimming, and lotus blossoms spilling petals like confetti. The air here carries faint aromas of yeast and honeyed barley, as if centuries-old offerings still cling to the stones. You probably won't find an all-you-can-eat buffet after you die, but in the Duat, tomb offerings are your lifeline. Mainstream Egyptologists note that depictions of funerary offerings date back to the early dynastic period, c. 310–100 BCE, where painted pallets in tombs already show jars of beer and loaves of bread, meant to nourish the... Historians still argue whether these offerings were intended primarily for the living's ceremonial display or genuinely believed to sustain the deceased in the afterlife. You approach a low alabaster table, carved in relief, where miniature loaves rest beside a goblet carved from a single piece of translucent quartz. Your guide explains each item's purpose: bread for sustenance, beer for refreshment, and lotus for rebirth. You recall how the lotus first appeared in Section 4 when you crossed the basalt pool, its scent mingling with desert dew. Today it represents regeneration, opening its petals at dawn and closing at dusk. Fringe whispers suggest some Egyptians actually anointed lotus petals with narcotic extracts to induce dreaming states during funerary rites, though chemical analyses of tomb residue have yet to confirm such practices. A sudden rustle makes you glance up. A pair of ibis-headed statues atop columns overlook the table. They clutch small trays loaded with figurines of geese, ducks, and even tiny cattle, symbols of abundance. The Ibis of Thoth clearly approves your heart, weighing back in section 3, you think, and feel a buoyant pride. Thoth's scribal legacy seems to include approving your meal plan. Your guide picks up a small pot of nun water, explaining that it symbolizes the primeval waters and acts as liquid for sacred offerings. You dip a finger and taste the cold liquid, heavy with mineral tang and a hint of lotus sugar, bringing back memories of that transformative sip in section 9. You shiver as the coolness spreads through your chest, reminding you that water can be as nourishing as wine. Carved hieroglyphs on the table's legs list the typical daily rations: 20 loaves of emmer bread, 4 jars of barley beer, 1 lotus bouquet, and a duck roast. You picture ancient workers hauling trays up ramps into royal tombs, a never-ending assembly line of afterlife comfort food. Historians still argue whether the number of offerings was standardized across society or varied by the tomb owner's status and wealth. A low breeze stirs the lotus petals, and you spot a tiny hieroglyphic doodle in a hidden corner. A stick figure captioned, "Fred ate my duck, curse him." Clearly complaints about freeloaders date back millennia. You smirk. Some things never change, even in the afterlife. Beside the table, a stone basin holds 11 small jars, oils infused with frankincense, myrrh, and cinnamon. Your guide uncorks one and wafts the vapor toward you. The scent is sharp and resinous, stirring your memory of Osiris's purification oil in section 2. You rub a drop on your wrists, feeling the warmth of cedar wood mingling with spicy undertones. Whether that warmth is chemical or cosmic remains a matter historians still debate. Above the offerings, painted bands depict mourners tearing their garments and wailing. A ritual called the lamentation. You tilt your head, imagining the sound of collective grief echoed in vast tomb chambers, contrasting sharply with the quiet feast before you. Fringe stories claim that professional weepers were paid to howl at tomb openings, sometimes even inventing dramatic curses for effect. Mainstream sources note such roles existed, but dispute the theatrical embellishments often described in Victorian travelogues. A narrow doorway beyond the table leads you into the Hall of Mirrors, where silvered walls reflect endless rows of offerings, multiplying them until the feast seems infinite. Your reflection stands among loaves and lotus stems, as if you too are part of the ritual abundance. You pause, recalling that in section 6, you handled the papyrus of Ani, texts full of spells to summon offerings magically. Here the illusion becomes tangible, mirrors and memory weaving together to sustain spirit. Your guide taps a small niche in the wall, revealing a hidden shelf holding 5 painted wooden boxes labeled for annual festival offerings. You lift one lid. Inside, a miniature pig roast carved from cedar wood. The inscription reads, "Year 1, Feast of Wepet Renpet." The festival of the opening of the year marked the Egyptian New Year, celebrated with feasting and river processions to honor Osiris's return. You wonder if the pigs in these boxes ever counted calories. Moving along, you pass a mural showing women weaving mats and men baking bread while priests sing hymns. The scene makes you smile. Back in section 13, you'll witness those very hymns in the temple ritual chamber, uniting living and dead. Historians still argue whether tomb murals documented actual workshop practices or idealized versions of ritual labor. A statue of Hathor, cow-eared goddess of joy and patron of funerary banquets, stands to the side, offering a bowl of wine. Your guide pours a draught, rich and red, like desert sunsets trapped in liquid form. You sip, thick with pomegranate, honey, and a hint of smoked date. The warmth spreads through you like good news. Fringe alchemists once tried infusing wine with powdered lapis lazuli to give it blue streaks, believing it would grant prophetic dreams. Archaeologists have found no residue to support this, but the legend endures. You tuck the empty goblet into your cloak, no one minding pilgrim souvenirs here. The bowl's smooth curves remind you of the solar disk you held aboard Barque in section 7. Circles of offering and rebirth repeating across your journey. At the far end of the hall, a low ramp spirals upward. Tokens of cloth and braided reeds hang from hooks, shrouds meant to redrape mummies for recurring festivals. Your guide explains that periodic re-wrapping ceremonies ensured the deceased remained present among the living, reinforcing the bond between realms. You trace the paths of colored linens, deep indigo, vibrant saffron, feeling the weight of centuries of devotion. Historians still argue whether these rituals were communal events, open to all, or intimate ceremonies held by priestly elites. Emerging at the ramp's summit, you find a final offering, a lotus wreath circled around a golden disc symbolizing the sun at its zenith. The wreath's petals are so lifelike, you almost smell their sweetness. You place it on your head. It feels light as air, a crown of renewal. You grin, thinking that if you ever need a cosmic headpiece, you know where to find one. You take one last look at the banquet hall. Empty tables waiting for souls yet to arrive, jars still glinting with nectar, and murals frozen in a moment of perpetual feast. You exhale, full of admiration, and maybe a tiny hunger pang. Your guide offers a final word. May these offerings keep your act nourished and strong. You nod, lotus wreath settling heavy with symbolic weight, and descend the ramp into the next chamber, your senses sated by sights, scents, and flavors of eternity. Word count, you step from the banquet hall's fragrant echoes into a lofty chamber whose walls are carved with vertical columns of text, ancient hieroglyphs arranged like rows of celestial code. Here lie the pyramid texts and coffin texts, the grandfathers and grandchildren of the Book of the Dead, inscribed on stone and wood to anchor souls in the afterlife. You probably won't carve your Instagram bio into a pyramid wall, but tonight, you're walking among the earliest funerary scripts ever penned. The first inscriptions you encounter climb high above you on polished limestone. The pyramid texts of Enos, the last ruler of Egypt's 5th dynasty, around 2450 BCE, etched directly onto the walls of royal burial chambers. Mainstream Egyptologists recognize these as the earliest known religious texts in the world, intended exclusively for pharaohs to ensure their ascent to the stars. Historians still argue whether these spells were secret royal property, or if fragments circulated among elite priests before evolving into later collections. You trace your fingers along one spell, known now as Utterance 217. Its lines promising the king's transformation into a flesh of stars, bone of heaven. The words feel weighty under your touch, like a promise carved in eternity. You recall how in Section 6, you pored over portable papyrus books of the dead. Here the spells are removable, bonded to the very stone of Giza. Lower down, coffin texts, spread across the sloping sides of wooden sarcophagi from the Middle Kingdom. You crouch to read a panel, where the deceased, now called the Justified One, repeatedly declares, "I have come that I may live," invoking protective deities to guide them through the Duat. Fringe whispers suggest some families commissioned secret variants, tiny coffin scrolls buried within the wood, hoping to outwit cosmic bureaucrats, but evidence remains tantalizingly elusive. Historians still argue whether the coffin texts democratized afterlife magic for commoners, or simply represented a royal branding exercise grafted onto elite woodwork. Rounding a central pillar, you discover a transitional inscription painted on limestone, a blend of pyramid and coffin spells, with early illustrations of the bar bird and an Anubis-headed figure receiving offerings. This hybrid text foreshadows the New Kingdom's papyrus scrolls, demonstrating how traditions morphed over centuries. You smile at the continuity, a cosmic relay race handing off magic from stone to wood to scroll. A sudden draft stirs dust motes that shimmer in the torchlight, and you catch sight of a quirky detail. A tiny glyph of a grinning farmer, sneaking a sickle from Anubis's offering table, as if someone centuries ago had a sense of humor about tax collection. You imagine them whispering, "Sorry, need this for dinner," a reminder that everyday Egyptians left their own little signatures even amid sacred spells. Your guide leads you to a massive coffin propped against the wall, the commoner's inner wooden coffin from Deir el-Bersha. Its exterior boasts 40 spells from the coffin texts in neat rows. Its interior is painted azure, dotted with stars and vignettes of the sun god's journey. You lean in, shading the glow of your lantern, and read a passage promising life everlasting in the horizon's embrace. You shiver at the poetic promise, picturing your own spirit lifted on solar rays. Fringe theorists have suggested that some coffin makers began experimenting with trace amounts of crushed malachite pigment, mixed into the blue paint to add energetic vibes to the spells. An alchemical approach scoffed at by most academics. Historians still argue whether pigment choice held symbolic potency beyond mere color symbolism, or was simply chosen for aesthetic appeal. You continue down a narrow aisle braced by coffins, stacked like giant blocks of carved wood. Here, personal names and family lineages appear alongside spells, a conscious shift from anonymous royal texts to personalized declarations. You spot one coffin labeled Senmut, Child of the Nile, whose owner invoked utterance 22 to open the hidden gate and join with Osiris. This personalization strikes you as a medieval autograph scrawled in cosmic margins. Suddenly, a voice echoes, "Prepare for the feast of the valley," and you're led to a small alcove where a painted wooden coffin lid rests on a stand. Priests place offerings, miniature loaves, ceramic fish, and a jar of wine at its head, reenacting a ritual you witnessed in Section 10. You inhale the mingled scents, remembering how offerings sustained the ka and nourished the ba in earlier stages of your journey. The guide recites a coffin text spell. "Grant that I may drink the water of life. May I sail on the celestial barque. May I eat the offerings of gods." You join in, your voice echoing off coffin lids, like a chant at a midnight potluck. You recall the solar barque's timbers in Section 7 and the shimmering pool of Section 9, feeling the threads of memory weaving together in this chamber of ancestral words. Ahead, a break in the wall reveals fragments of limestone blocks, pieces of old pyramids repurposed into a later chapel. On one you see a faint carving of a cartouche, now barely visible, suggesting tomb robbers or reuse by subsequent generations. Fringe gossip claims early Christians hijacked pyramid stones to build Coptic churches, but mainstream historians note evidence is scant and likely exaggerated by 19th century explorers. Historians still argue whether this reuse signifies disrespect for pagan pasts, or pragmatic recycling of precious limestone. Your guide motions to a low platform where a narrow wooden shelf holds 5 small stelae upright tablets inscribed with selected spells from the coffin texts. Each one is topped with the owner's name and offering formula. You inspect a stela for Teti's servant, Neferhotep. Noticing the parallel structure to royal inscriptions, Neferhotep says, "My soul shall not weary, my bones shall not decay." The humility in that declaration strikes you, royal exaltation toned down for everyday piety. A Fringe lecturer once argued that stelae were mass-produced by temple workshops, hinting at an early print run, but no workshop records survive to confirm or deny. Historians still argue whether such stelae were commissioned by families as status symbols or genuinely believed to house magical power independent of large scrolls. Near the corner, you find a coffin shaped like a giant bud of papyrus, painted in green and gold. This model coffin used to test spells before inscribing them on real coffins, bears trial glyphs, corrections scraped away, and a faint coffee ring stain from an errant scribe's cup. You chuckle softly. Even ancient scribes needed breaks. You imagine their astonishment if they saw your latte swirls. Your guide explains these test coffins were the scribal equivalent of a rehearsal dinner, spare practice before the main event. You nod appreciatively, recalling your own rehearsals before this journey, checking spells and packing talismans. This rehearsal coffin feels deeply human amid the grandeur of royal texts. At the chamber's far end, a pair of statues flank a massive sarcophagus, a late Middle Kingdom example where pyramid, coffin, and early Book of the Dead spells mingle in one grand compilation. You stand before it and realize you've traversed the full evolution of Egyptian funerary writing, from rigid royal edicts to colorful, personalized papyrus guides. A sense of awe wells within you. You place a hand on the ill-fitted lid, feeling the grooves of countless scribal hands that once flowed over this very stone. The guide whispers, "Your journey is inscribed by these words. May they serve you as they served kings and commoners alike." You close your eyes and murmur a verse from Utterance 2:17, remembering the rolling stars and bones of heaven promised long ago. Opening your eyes, you see the glyphs shimmer as if acknowledging your tribute. You step back, lantern flame flickering against carved lines, and feel the continuity of centuries in your bones. The pyramid texts and coffin texts have done their work, anchoring souls, guiding spirits, and now, anchoring you in this timeless tale. You turn and walk toward the next chamber, carrying in your heart the echo of stone words and wooden prayers. Ahead lie living rituals and whispered debates, But for now, the voices of scribes past accompany your steps, carved in memory and ink, a lineage of hope stretching across millennia. You step into a wide courtyard open to a starlit sky, the hush of the Duat momentarily replaced by the distant murmur of drums and chants. Lanterns swing from stone pillars bedecked with festal garlands, and you realize you've entered the realm where the living honor the dead, Egyptian festivals of remembrance that blur the lines between worlds. You probably won't find your co-workers skipping work to wave bouquets at tombs, but here annual rituals keep souls fresh in memory and magic. Torches flare as a procession moves past, mourners clad in white, carrying loaves, jugs of beer, and woven reeds. Mainstream sources record that festivals like the beautiful Festival of the Valley, celebrated in Thebes, invited the bard of the deceased to leave their tombs and roam among loved ones, feasting and reveling under moonlight. Historians still argue whether these banquets were spontaneous local customs adopted by priests or grand state ceremonies choreographed by temple bureaucrats. You slip into the crowd, robe-brushing papyrus mats laid across fanned sand. The scent of incense, myrrh, cedar, and lotus swirls around, reminding you of Osiris's purification oil back in Section 2. Drummers beat a slow rhythm that echoes like a heartbeat, as families approach appointed niches where they lay offerings. You press a tray of lotus-shaped cakes onto one pedestal, recalling how tomb offerings in Section 10 sustained the care. Here, the living's gifts sustain both memory and magic. A slender priestess raises a reed flute to her lips and begins to play a haunting melody. You probably won't find this tune on Spotify, but its minor notes tug at your soul. Fringe tales say farmers once hid dice under reed mats during these festivals, so ancestral spirits could gamble and perhaps tip the odds toward a good harvest. But few credible accounts survive beyond travelers' exaggerations. Historians still argue whether such playful games formed part of the ritual, or were later foreign embellishments melded into the story. Past a row of alabaster offering tables you recognize painted on walls in Section 11's coffin chamber. You see live musicians, lyre players, harpists, and even a percussionist striking lotus-shaped cymbals. Their tuning bolts whine gently, musicians trading glances like backstage crew before a show. You smirk. Even in the Afterlife's industry, stagecraft matters. Suddenly, dancers emerge draped in shrouds painted to resemble mummies, their motions stiff and jerky, an artistic touch that prefigures modern interpretive dance. They move toward a stone barque model on wheels, echoing Ra's vessel from sections. As they push it slowly along a carved track, onlookers chant spells to guide bassols back to their tombs when the festival ends. You crane your neck, spotting a Fringe engraving on the base. "May my cousin not forget my birthday," a humorous plea, half scratched, half carved, showing Egyptians never missed a chance for a little sarcasm. You wander to a nearby pavilion where scribes dip brushes in ink to record names of participants, inscribing them on a linen book of names. Mainstream evidence shows such registers existed in New Kingdom Thebes, ensuring the deceased's identity remained alive in ritual memory. Historians still debate whether these ledgers functioned as magical registers binding bassols to the festival or simply served administrative needs for offering distribution. A family leads forth a mummiform statue of their ancestor, placing it on a low dais, surrounded by flickering oil lamps. You remember the personalized statuettes you glimpsed in Section 5 among amulets. This is a life-sized variant, intended to give your spirit a body for communal celebration. Fringe rumor suggests some statues were painted with luminescent pigments made from ground beetles, but mainstream conservators scoff. There's little evidence these pigments glowed after dark. A priest recites a spell from the Book of the Dead, one you handled back in Section 6, inviting the bar to partake. "O spirit beloved, come forth that you may eat the bread, drink the beer, dance among the living." The dancers whirl, and you step aside as onlookers raise handfuls of barley to toss into the air, a shower of grain symbolizing abundance and rebirth. You scoop up one stray grain, roll it between your fingers, and feel oddly connected to centuries of revelers who did the same. Nearby, musicians strike a sudden cadence, and the crowd parts to reveal a troupe of mask-wielding actors enacting scenes from Osiris's myth, resurrection, judgment, triumph. You nod. This is ancient Egypt's answer to community theatre. Fringe theorists claim that some performances ended with real cattle releases for symbolic hunts, but mainstream sources insist those accounts stem from misinterpretations of festival bull sacrifices at Apipist chapels. Historians still argue whether large-scale animal rites featured in local remembrance festivals or remained exclusive to state-sponsored processions. Above you, women place wreaths of lotus, reed, and acacia on niches, carved with family names, echoes of the wreath you wore in Section 10. Each wreath binds past to present, mortal to divine. You tread carefully, mindful of trampling another soul's offering. A stray reed tickles your ankle, and you laugh softly. Even in sacred ceremonies, someone's broom might be overdue for retirement. Moving deeper into the court, you see a semicircle of tall poles topped with painted wooden shabti figures, servant statues meant to labor on behalf of the dead. Families recite offering formulas before each shabti, invoking them to fetch water, tend fields, and tend cattle in the next world. You grunt jokingly, "Wish I had one of these for my inbox." The guides laugh, and you share a moment of levity, proof that humor too is timeless. As midnight approaches, torches dim to a soft glow. The priestess on flute plays a closing dirge, signaling the best souls to return to their tombs. You watch as glowing wisps, spectral representations of bird, rise from statues and niches. Drawn back by unseen threads, the crowd lowers their voices to whispers, then silence. You feel a soft tug at your chest. Like a gentle goodbye hug, you step forward to touch the wheeled Barque model once more, nodding to the silent ancestors who linger here. The priest recites a final blessing. May your name endure, your heart remain unburdened, and your memory shine among the living. You echo it, voice catching just enough to feel meaningful. The courtyard empties, lanterns extinguish one by one, and a hush falls. You stand amid offering pots, reed mats, and the faint scent of baked cakes. The living depart, leaving behind the trappings of remembrance and the echo of shared feast. You stay a moment longer, recalling Section 3's heart-weighing, Section 9's transformation, and the festival's living dead communion that stitches it all together. At last, you turn and follow a torchlit alley that leads back toward the quieter trials of the Duat. Underfoot, stray petals and grains crackle softly. You tuck your tray of lotus cakes into your cloak. After all, a traveller's snack never goes to waste. You probably won't host a reunion this epic, but you carry in your heart the warmth of living remembrance and the promise that memory itself can bridge realms. With that, you step forward, the distant echo of drums fading, ready for the next whispers and wonders awaiting beyond. You slip through the carved doorway into a hushed sanctuary, where columns of limestone soar overhead and shafts of moonlight pierce stained glass lamps, casting jewel-toned ripples on the polished floor. The air is heavy with incense, jasmine, myrrh, and a faint trace of cedar, melding into a whisper of holiness that curls around your ribs like a velvet glove. Tonight, you step behind temple doors to witness priests performing rituals meant to bridge the worlds of the living and the dead. You probably won't get invited to the inner sanctum at your local church, but here, you're front row at Egypt's original ASMR cathedral. Ahead, a row of priests in crisp white kilts stand before an alabaster altar, carved with the image of Amun-Ra, arms outstretched in eternal benediction. They chant in low, rhythmic tones, each syllable a precise pulse in the ritual heartbeat. Mainstream Egyptologists note that temple prayers and liturgies were codified by the New Kingdom, c. 1550 BCE, when priestly classes formalized daily offerings to sustain divine order. Historians still argue whether these liturgies evolved from purely oral traditions or were inscribed early on temple walls and tablets, shaping priests' recollections. You step forward, drawing breath that tastes of cooled stone and lavender. A senior lector priest holds aloft a bronze censer, its chains clinking like distant bells. He swings it in graceful arcs, releasing drifting plumes of smoke. The rising tendrils swirl around sandaled feet and waver toward the ceiling's painted astral scenes. Fringe accounts claim some temple technicians rigged hidden vents to control incense flow, creating dramatic smoke effects, though skeptics dismiss this as modern myth, born of Victorian spectacle. The chant deepens into the hymn to Osiris, celebrating his resurrection and promise of rebirth. Hail to you, Osiris, Lord of Silence. Grant your voice of thunder to these halls, they intone. Voices merging like a choir of ghosts, remembering a single sacred memory. You probably won't recite this at your next open mic night, but the words reverberate in your chest, a reminder that sound itself carried power. A flute solo emerges, a single breathy note echoing through niches lined with bronze offering bowls. You lean in, catching the breathy hiss of notes dancing around polished columns. Mainstream sources describe temple musicians using reed flutes and harps tuned to microtonal intervals meant to lull worshippers into meditative states. Historians still argue whether these scales imitated natural patterns, birdsong, river flow, or represented a purely symbolic language of the divine. At the foot of the altar, a priestess pours water from a vessel shaped like the lotus, letting droplets fall onto sacred papyrus scrolls. The water hisses softly as it hits warmed stone, each splash a punctuation in the ceremony. You feel an itch of envy. Imagine spilling chai on your laptop and calling it divine purification instead of a hardware emergency. The high priest steps forward, staff in hand, and recites the opening of the mouth ritual, meant to restore the senses of statues and mummies, so that gods and dead may breathe, see, and speak. Breath of life, enter your statue. Vision of dawn, open these eyes, he declares. Fringe sources insist that early ritual manuals contained hidden stage directions, foot-thumping cues, staff-tilting choreography to synchronize priests' movements, though no ancient diagrams survive to prove it. You watch as a sacred sculpted eye of Horus is anointed with oil, the metal surface gleaming. The high priest whispers, "May this eye see truth. May this face speak justice." Suddenly the image flickers in torchlight, as though awakened by the touch, whether it's genuine magic or just your imagination fueled by sleep deprivation. You can't say, but the spark in your nerve endings feels undeniably real. Behind you, temple acolytes shuffle forward, offering platters of bread and wine. You catch a wisp of fresh-baked barley mingling with honey and cinnamon. A callback to the banquet hall in Section 10. But here it's consecrated, no longer mere snack, but divine sustenance. You glimpse a quirky note scratched in chalk on a stone bench. "Don't eat the priest's lunch." A reminder that even temple staffs enjoyed lunchtime pranks. The lilies arranged by the altar sway gently in a hidden draught, petals brushing cool stone. A hush falls, and the priests begin the litany of Re-Kingdom, invoking deities in 48 epithets, one for each hour of the day. You recite a few softly. Hail, Epet, soul of the god, protector of the newborn son. Historians still argue whether reciting all epithets daily was standard or reserved for coronation ceremonies, but temple walls from Karnak show long lists inscribed for ritual use. A sudden clang echoes as a bronze gong is struck, its reverberation pulsing through the air like a heartbeat. You startle, heart and world aligning in that moment of sound. The gong's fading hum leaves behind a palpable silence that quivers, as if reality itself paused to exhale. Your guide gestures to a niche where a stone basin holds purifying water, infused with natron crystals. Dipping his fingertips, he flicks droplets onto the altar, the mineral grains gleaming like trapped starlight. Mainstream belief held that natron cleansed both physical and spiritual impurities, used in mummification and temple rites alike. Historians still debate whether natron was sourced locally or transported from specialized deposits to ensure ritual purity. You step closer, and the cold water puckers your skin. The drop falls to your tunic, leaving a salt-kissed stain. The guide nods approvingly. Receive the purity of the gods. You pat the drop away. No formal gestures, just a human response to an ancient invitation. At the ceremony's climax, the high priest raises a painted wooden statue of the god Amun, placing it on the altar. Carved eyes inlaid with lapis lazuli seem to flicker awake. You probably won't host a statue unveiling at home, but here it's literal, divine presence incarnate. The priests launch into a crescendo of singing, a guttural, rolling chant that resonates like tectonic plates shifting. As the final note fades, a single lotus petal drifts from the ceiling onto the altar, landing with ceremonial grace. You recall the lotus wreath from Section 10, its petals watering rebirth. This petal seems charged, an unscripted flourish by temple mechanics or a gentle nod from unseen spirits. Fringe theorists argue such petals were mechanically released from hidden chambers, but you choose to believe in a whisper of actual magic. Silence reigns. The priests bow in unison, then step back, leaving the statue bathed in lamplight and incense smoke. You stand there, breath held, feeling the stillness settle into your bones. The temple feels alive, every carved relief, every flickering lamp, every grain of sand pulsing with ancient attention. You lower your head, offering a silent prayer, not for yourself but for every soul who ever sought guidance here. Historians still debate whether temple prayers were thought to benefit the living, the dead, or both, but in this moment it feels universal. A soft voice, your guide, breaks the hush. The ritual is complete. May the gods accept our offering, and may you carry their peace onward. You exhale, the sound mingling with the distant drip of water from a cleft in the wall. You step away from the altar, shoulders lighter, senses sharpened. The echo of song still lingers on your eardrums, each note a reminder that sound shapes reality as strongly as stone carvers shaped this hall. Ahead waits the final gauntlet of scholarly debate and serenity. Sections 14 through 16 beckon with fringe mysteries and calming whispers. But for now, you carry with you the hush and heartbeat of temple prayer, a living echo of devotion that spans millennia. You pass beyond the hush of temple hymns into a hidden chamber where the walls tilt inward, forming an underground labyrinth that seems to pulse with whispered secrets. Flickering oil lamps set in niches cast tremulous shadows that dance like restless spirits, and the air smells of damp stone mingled with a faint metallic tang, possibly from the iron-rich water that seeps through cracks overhead. You probably won't find a lost maze in your local subway station, but here in the Duat's underbelly, you're navigating the most arcane corridors of ancient Egyptian fringe beliefs. Ahead, a low stone arch carved with the head of a jackal woman opens into a side passage. Your guide murmurs that this is the realm of animal-headed souls, dire spirits thought to take the form of hybrid creatures beyond the four sons of Horus. You met back in section. Mainstream sources note that some late-period funerary texts mention lesser bear beings, depicted as griffin-headed or serpent-tailed phantoms, intended to guard secret passages in the Duat. Historians still argue whether these references reflect genuine popular belief or later poetic flourishes penned by temple scribes, seeking to spice up the afterlife narrative. You grip the rough basalt wall and step under the jackal arch. Inside, reliefs show creatures with lion bodies, falcon wings, and crocodile tails, an unsettling menagerie that makes you thank your earlier choice of sandals over open-toed footwear. Fringe scholars have proposed these beings represent syncretic fusions of local animal cults, like Sobek's crocodile fury mixed with Horus's avian nobility, but concrete archaeological evidence is slim and debated fiercely. A chill gust brushes past you, and you hear low hisses echoing from a narrow corridor ahead. Your guide flicks a small lantern toward the carvings. Here, serpent-bodied figures hold trays of offering cakes, as if they too share in the festival banquets you witnessed back in section. You smell sweet dough and crumbed honey, though the cakes are mere stone, perhaps a metaphor for gratitude that never spoils. You pause to trace a whimsical detail. A relief of a cat-headed bar lounging atop a pile of gold rings, one paw extended as if demanding rubs behind the ears. A quirky fringe text claims this cherished feline spirit was worshipped by some Egyptians as a household guardian in death, an idea that amuses you because you own 3 cats and know how they regard mere mortals. Historians still argue whether such cat-headed afterlife spirits originated in temple doctrine or emerged from popular household iconography. In the center of the chamber stands a slender column painted with twisted hieroglyphs. Your guide explains this is called the Shaft of Shifting Paths, a legend spoken of only in whispers. Souls who wander off the main track must navigate this vertical shaft, climbing invisible rungs that appear only when certain spells are muttered. You probably won't find a magic elevator in your corporate office, but here the glyphs shimmer when you quietly recite Ampu Sekem, a protective invocation you learned back in section. The column's surface ripples and a hidden ladder pulses into view. A subtle theatrical effect, or genuine Duat sorcery? The debate rages on among scholars. You climb carefully, smelling the dank moss that thrives in the shaft's humidity. As you reach a tiny landing lit by bioluminescent fungus, an odd detail that feels more like a Victorian-era fantasy than archaeological reality. You notice a small alcove containing a bronze mirror framed with ibis wings. Legend says a soul gazes into this mirror to confront its true form, but fringe accounts suggest the reflection sometimes shows a chimera-like creature, a hint that some Egyptians believed the afterlife self could be unnervingly alien. Mainstream text remains silent on such mirror visions, and historians still argue whether this practice ever existed or was simply an imaginative motif in late-period tomb paintings. You sip a gulp of Underworld spring water from your flask, recalling the icy lotus-scented water in Section 4, and feel the cool drops slide down your throat. Your breath clouds in the humid air as you lean closer to the mirror. Your reflection shimmers, then snaps back into your familiar visage, scarab talisman glinting at your chest. You exhale, relieved that the labyrinth hasn't conjured a horror show chimera, though your pulse races with the possibility that next time the mirror might lie. Descending the ladder, you enter a wider gallery lined with niches, holding tiny statues of animal-headed, porcupine, quills, jackal ears, vulture wings. Each holds a diminutive offering bowl carved of alabaster. You recall the amulets in Section 5 and marvel at how this shrine feels like a miniature version of that larger protective display, tiny guardians within a grander divine arsenal. Fringe commentators claim that devotees once placed real offerings before these mini-altars, believing the animal bough would carry provisions back to their tombs. But excavation reports find little residue, leaving the practice hypothetical at best. Your guide points to a mural showing a soul conversing with one of these bad beings, exchanging secret passwords to bypass a roaring sphinx. You hear a faint rumble, whether it's the sphinx's roar or an echoing cave drip, you can't tell. You remember the scholarly debates from Section 8 about whether sphinx gates were literal barriers or metaphorical trials. Historians still argue if any funerary texts ever prescribed sphinx encounters or if they're later Hellenistic borrowings from Greek myth. Moving onward, the passage opens into a dome where the ceiling is painted like an inverted desert night sky, sprinkled with tiny lead-based stars. At its center, a colossal relief depicts a monstrous human-headed jackal, Set Anubis, a hybrid form some fringe sects claimed existed to judge souls who failed Amit's trial. These sects, shunned by mainstream priests, left cryptic notes threatening eternal second chances for the damned, an idea so outside official canon it lives only in scattered papyrus scraps. Mainstream Egyptologists dismiss Set Anubis as a product of late-period magical handbooks, and historians still argue whether any credible temple evidence supports his worship at all. You walk beneath Set Anubis's looming gaze, feeling a prickle of unease, as if his dual nature combines chaos and guidance, reminding you that Underworld power balances on a knife's edge. You recall the candlelit heart weighing from Section 3 and wonder what fate awaited those whose hearts tipped uncertainly here. Finally, a carved doorway bearing the hieroglyphic phrase, "Return to the true path," stands before you. Your guide tells you this leads back to the main route of the Duat, bypassing further fringe detours. You step through and feel the air grow warmer, tinged with incense and desert breeze, a comforting callback to the solar Barque's inner sanctum in Section 7. As you emerge, you glance back at the labyrinth's entrance, relief mingling with curiosity. Those hidden corridors house the most tantalizing speculations of Egyptian afterlife lore, blending animal-headed guardians, shifting shafts, and forbidden sex. Whether any of it reflects authentic ancient practice or inventive narrative spurred by Egyptomania, the mysteries linger like half-whispered secrets at the edge of memory. You exhale, pressing your palm against your chest where your scarab rests, feeling both grounded and a little unsteady after confronting the Duat's wildest fringes. Ahead lie the final judgments of scholars and the serene repose of Section 16, one last stretch before eternal calm. You step forward, senses buzzing, ready for the concluding debates and your ultimate rest. You step from the twisting fringe corridors into a grand hall of polished limestone, where rows of empty stone benches form a semicircle around a raised dais hung with faded papyrus banners. Flickering oil lamps set in bronze sconces cast dancing shadows on shelves lined with scrolls, fragments, and clay tablets. An ancient university where Egypt's greatest minds once debated the mysteries of death. You probably won't find tenure-track positions in the Duat, but tonight you're auditing a symposium on everything you've experienced so far. A hush falls as you take a seat, the crackle of lamp flames echoing like distant whispers. At the center, 3 robed priests, scribal scholars by day, ritual debaters by night, rise and bow. One holds a fragment of the Book of the Dead, another a piece of pyramid text inscription, and the last a weathered coffin text panel. They prepare to joust not with spears but with words. Mainstream Egyptologists agree that scholarly debates in temple precincts date back to at least the Ramesside period, c. 1300 BCE, when high priests in Thebes recorded marginal notes arguing nuances of ritual timing and wording. Historians still argue whether these debates happened only in inner sancta among elite scribes or played out publicly during festival seasons. The first priest unfurls a scroll of spell 25 and reads aloud, "O heart of my mother, do not rise against me." He argues that the repeated invocation of the heart of mother emphasizes maternal protection, suggesting the ritual's origin in household cults rather than state temples. Fringe theorists chime in from the sidelines, claiming a hidden anagram in the hieroglyph spells Ma'at's secret, which would grant initiates forbidden cosmic power. But most academics dismiss that as a 19th century misreading by Romantic poets. You recall your own recitation in section 3, feeling the weight of that heart plea, even then, and you wonder which interpretation resonates truer. The second priest stands, voice low. But consider the pyramid text version. The heart is invoked as heart of the king, not mother, affirming royal lineage and state ideology. He waves his fragment, pointing to utterance 217. Where the pharaoh's flesh becomes stars of heaven. You remember tracing those very glyphs in section 11, marveling at their cosmic grandeur. Historians still argue whether pyramid texts served as political propaganda for divine kingship, or as genuine spiritual manuals, he continues, echoing the open debate. The third priest steps forward with a clay shard inscribed in hieratic. Chapter 30b's heart scarab is a later commoner adaptation. Notice the simplified script and omission of maternal language. He argues that the shift from royal to popular funerary practice diluted the original meaning, turning personal magic into a mass-market commodity. You smirk, thinking of the tiny scroll you tucked into your tunic back in section 6, a pocket guide for underworld survival. A hush returns, broken only by the hiss of a dropped torch ember. Then, from a dark corner, a Fringe devotee stands on a low stool, brandishing a papyrus snipped with obscure glyphs. You're all missing the greatest debate, the nature of the Duat itself. Was it a physical underworld mapped along the Nile's course, or a purely spiritual realm coexistent with the living world? He points to a sketch from the Temple of Anubis at Abydos, where murals show rivers and gates much like those you crossed in sections 4 and evidence of subterranean passages in Valley of the Kings. Supports the literal model tombs tunneled into rock, mirroring cosmic geography. The second priest scoffs softly. Subterranean tombs do not a Duat make. The Duat's fiery rivers and flaming gates, he gestures toward a charcoal, rubbing depicting flames, are symbolic purifications aligned with solar theology, not actual hazards you'd survive by sandals alone. You recall glimpsing those molten streams in section 4 and laughing at your makeshift riverboat daydream. Historians still argue whether tomb architects intentionally mimicked Duat geography, or simply built practical burial spaces. A ripple of tension passes through the audience. The first priest raises a small ostrich feather, Ma'at's emblem, and declares without cosmic order, no weight can tip. The debate over Ma'at's role in ritual precedence underpins our entire understanding of afterlife justice. Was the heart weighed only once, or at every gate? He cites a damaged papyrus from a Theban cache, suggesting multiple mini-weighings, one for each of the 42 gates you recited in section. Fringe scholars pounce on the idea, dubbing it the Duat's quality control process. But mainstream experts point out the papyrus may simply list alternative spell variants, not sequential ceremonies. You shift on the bench, recalling the singular heart weighing, how the scale balanced only once before Amit loomed. If mini-weighings existed, your banquet of bread and beer from section 10 might have required constant recalibration. You hail your own reliable scarab talisman for spoiling any sand leakage from that scale. The third priest slams his clay shard gently on the dais and urges, "Let us speak of timing." Does the opening of the mouth ritual occur before sarcophagus, sealing, or only after burial rites concluded? Pyramid texts place it pre-entombment. Coffin texts hint at a twilight ceremony. You recall witnessing the opening in section 13, priests chanting before a statue at night, incense billowing. Historians still argue whether this rite was a private graveyard affair or a public temple spectacle. He continues, summoning echoes of your ASMR cathedral. At that, The Fringe devotee from the corner stands again, eyes bright. And what of the Ak's transformation? Some burial hymns say the Ak emerges at dawn. Others claim it happens within 40 days of death. Do Ak become stars immediately? Or must they undergo 40 days of purification corresponding to Osiris's dismemberment cycle? He holds up a fragment of a desert-penned funerary hymn referencing 40 chambers of purification. Mainstream voices counter that those chambers symbolize lunar phases, not literal rooms, but no consensus emerges. You press a hand to your heart, felt secure since you're balancing, and feel a familiar flutter at the edge of memory. The cool pool in Section 9, the rising halo of light, as you sipped that honeyed dawn water. Was that moment an instant, or the culmination of weeks of ritual? The question lingers like incense smoke in a drafty hall. A lone priest stands, brushing dust from a pyramid text uvula carving. Consider the nature of the Duat's gates. Are they static thresholds or fluid aspects of consciousness? Some argue gates represent stages of inner enlightenment, not physical passages. He gestures to a hieratic commentary scribbled in red. Open your mind, not your feet. Fringe writers love that phrase, using it to argue for a mystical, psychological duat, an introspective journey rather than a geography to navigate. Historians still debate whether such mystical interpretations reflect genuine pharaonic thought or modern romantic projections. Silence settles like a soft cloak. You lean back, lantern glow warm against your face, absorbing the swirl of contested theories. Each debate, heart, mother, timing, cosmos, feels like another trial in the Duat's endless library. Yet, as with every trial, there's no final verdict, only the process of seeking balance. Beyond the benches, a carved relief of Osiris watches impassively, his green visage unchanged by centuries of scholarly wrangling. You imagine him nodding sagely, amused by mortals' endless wordplay over spells intended to grant them eternal calm. You smirk, recalling the High Priest's challenge in Section 2. Pay attention, there might be a quiz later. Tonight's quiz is still in progress, and the students are both amused and humbled. At last, the grand debate draws to a close. The three priests bow to one another, acknowledging no single answer suffices. You rise, heart steady, mind buzzing with fresh questions. Was that 70-word debate more demanding than crossing the river of fire? Did passing hieratic variants feel more perilous than the gauntlet of serpents? The hall feels charged, as if the act of questioning itself carries cosmic weight. You tuck your scarab talisman into your cloak and step toward the exit. An archway carved with the phrase "Wisdom is the true passage." Ahead, Section 16 awaits. The final Serenity, where the calm of endless desert winds and the fading echoes of scholarly fervor blend into the peaceful afterlife rest you've earned. You pause at the threshold, inhale deeply, and whisper, "May my questions guide me, but may doubt rest beside peace." With that you step through, leaving the hall of debates behind, carrying both curiosity and calm into the final repose. You step through the final basalt archway into a vast chamber where the walls curve skyward, painted in dusky shades of twilight that shift from deep indigo to soft rose, as if capturing the moment between day and night. Lanterns hang suspended by invisible cords, their flames dancing with a gentle sway that suggests a breeze you cannot feel. The air here carries no scent of incense or lotus, only the quiet hum of absence, an emptiness that feels comforting rather than unsettling. You probably won't find a make me feel fine button in your daily life, but tonight you've arrived at the resting place beyond trials where eternal calm awaits. Ahead, a pool of still, mirror-black water stretches nearly the width of the chamber. Its surface is so perfectly smooth that it seems to absorb light rather than reflect it, as though you're peering into a doorway to infinite possibility. You recall crossing rivers of fire, balancing scales, and navigating labyrinths. Here, none of that matters. The gods have drawn you to this final threshold, not to test your courage, but to offer release. Historians still argue whether the ultimate destination in Egyptian belief was nirvanic oblivion, or a perpetual cycle of blissful existence. And maybe both notions lived side by side, an ambiguity made intentional by priests who knew comfort often comes in knowing options exist. Soft strains of a distant melody drift through the air, a single flute weaving around muted harp plucks, so faint you wonder if you're imagining it. Yet the music is unmistakable, an ancient lullaby used by temple musicians to signal the end of nightly rites. You inhale deeply, feeling the chamber's hush settle into your bones like warm water in a stone well. Fringe accounts say this lullaby was composed by Thoth himself, as a gift to souls weary of endless journeys, but mainstream scholars note no papyrus has ever named its composer, leaving it anonymous and universal. You approach the pool, footsteps echoing softly on polished limestone. Each step seems to slow time itself, giving you space to remember everything you've been through. The whispering torches of Section 4's River of Fire, the serpent gauntlet rattling in your dreams, the 42 gates where names held power, the solar Barque's triumphant passage, and the Ak transformation's radiant glow. In each memory you felt fear and wonder, humor and relief. Now, you carry them all like a garland, each loop weaving into the next. A figure emerges beside the pool, an alabaster statue of a seated deity whose features combine Osiris's calm poise and Hathor's gentle gaze. It holds a polished ebony mirror tilted toward the water. You know what the mirror offers? A final glimpse of self before leaving self behind. Without hesitation, you kneel at the water's edge, eyes on your reflection as it ripples to reveal not a single face, but the composite of every form you assumed in the Duat. Traveller, supplicant, judge's subject, deckhand on Barque, newly shining act. You're all of those and none, and in that paradox, you find peace. The music swells for an instant, then fades. The statue's mirror tilts forward, its surface catching your image, framed by flickering lanterns and dusky sky. You breathe in, heart echoing the chamber's vibrations. A whisper drifts from unseen lips. Rest now, child of earth and star. The words feel neither foreign nor strange. They resonate with something ancient within you, echoing the lullaby's final note. You close your eyes, leaving footprints on smooth stones and offering silent thanks to every god and guide who accompanied you. Whether those guides were real beings or facets of your own spirit, they helped you learn the power of belief, the grace of balance, and the sweetness of acceptance. You recall the tiny graffiti jokes, "Fred ate my duck," and the gentle sarcasm that reminded you laughter lives even in the darkest corridors. That humor carried you through fear, just as hope carried you through trials. A soft glow rises from the pool's center, spreading outward until the entire chamber is bathed in twilight blue. The lanterns dim, their flames extinguishing without a sound, leaving only the pool's glow as your lantern. You stand, its light painting your shadow long and lean against the far wall, merging you with the fresco of dancing stars above. Time seems to stretch and bend. Minutes become hours, moments become eternity. You step into the pool's edge, the cool water enveloping your ankles and rising to your knees without ripples. It feels like floating, as if solid ground has released its hold. You breathe slowly, savoring each moment of weightlessness. Remember the river of fire's heat. It's gone. The gauntlet's serpents? Below you. The scale's weight? Lifted. Here, in this chamber beyond challenge, emptiness offers fullness. You wade deeper, water touching your waist, then chest. Up close, the surface is not merely reflective but translucent, like dark glass revealing faint pulses of light rising from its depths. You see shapes swirling, forms of lotus petals, feathers of mart, wings of the Ak, all drifting upward toward a point of convergence at the pool's horizon. A single lotus blooms on the water, its petals aglow, and you reach out to touch it. It dissolves at your fingertips into motes of starlight. A hush deeper than silence envelops you, and you close your eyes at last. You let the memories drift away, one by one, the laughter of your guide, the weight of each talisman that felt so vital, the taste of honeyed water, the echo of song, the thrill of crossing cosmic seas. They become part of the pool's eternal tapestry, woven into this final moment of release. You feel your feet leave the stone floor, buoyed by the water's lightness. A breeze, gentle, unnoticeable, until it's gone, caresses your face. When you next open your eyes, the water is gone too, and you stand on soft sand beneath a desert sky, streaked with the first rays of dawn. The chamber has vanished. Only the hush remains, lingering in your ears like a tender promise. You take one last breath of desert air, tasting freedom beyond boundaries. Ahead, there is no path, only endless horizon. You breathe again, heart calm, mind clear, spirit at rest. Now the desert winds soften, and your body feels as light as drifting sand under a pale moon. Each breath lengthens, slowing like a sunset's final glow before melting into night. Let your muscles uncoil like rippling dunes, giving way to calm plains. Feel every heartbeat soften to a melody of stillness. Each pulse, a gentle wave lapping at memory's shore. Your mind, once racing through gates and glyphs, now floats free of expectation. Thoughts drift like wisps of cloud against an empty sky, dissolving without trace. Warm silence cradles you. No shadows, no secrets, only the soft hum of desert air whispering lullabies of peace. Every sense is soothed, the echo of footfalls replaced by the hush of distant stars, the scent of incense exchanged for cool starlight on skin. Know that you are held by ancient sands, by drifting stars, by the calm promise of infinity. Here, beneath the silent sky, all fear and doubt fall away like grains of sand slipping through open fingers. Rest now, cradled in the vast stillness where the soul finds its final refuge. Let your spirit ease into the endless horizon, wrapped in the hush of eternity and the gentle embrace of tranquil dawn. End of script. Sweet dreams.